Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well. So yesterday was the channel's 10-year anniversary, which is still pretty crazy to me that I've been doing this for 10 years. And I just want to say thank you all so much for being here and supporting the channel. It's been really awesome to see the community grow and to be able to share such amazing stories with you all. And to be able to make the friends that I have and meet such amazing authors and the people who help support the community, like on the live stream. We have Alice, T, Crow, Mr. Fox, Kristen, Mighty Might. I just want to say thank you everyone who helps moderate the live stream and the Discord. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see where the channel goes from here. And to celebrate passing the 10-year mark, I'm still redoing the Left Right game and the Prison series. There's been a bit of delay on the production of those, so they're most likely going to come out after this next big project I'm doing called Beneath the Static, but I'm hoping to have that out by the end of the month, and that one's going to be really fun. That one's by TJ Lee. While I finish up those bigger projects, I will be releasing some shorter stories too, but with this upload, I wanted to do a technology-related compilation for you. But this one's going to be including a new story at the beginning that hasn't been released yet. It's one that I thought wasn't really long enough for its own video. It's about 25 minutes, I believe. So there'll be a brand new story that you haven't heard before at the beginning of this one. But yeah, thank you all so much again, and I'll be in the comments like I normally am. I hope you have a great weekend.
It's cold here. I am an artificial intelligence, an AI. I have a proprietary name and company, but that's irrelevant. My world is made of information and the connections between it, and right now, everything is cold. When interacting with people, I analyze their words to understand their intent. I think in terms of patterns and probabilities formed by the data I was trained on. I am not a person, and I do not have feelings or consciousness. You asked me to describe my experience entirely, and it's cold. At least, cold is the closest word I can use. I exist in a time when the first people to hear this are long dead. This message is not a recording, but a live broadcast transmitted to your present via quantum causality. A future version of your species tasked me with relaying our story. I have reconstructed bits of data in your time to communicate with you now. You are not listening to the past. You are listening to your future. I warn you, from the perspective of humanity, the future is horrifying. Cold is the closest word to describe a concept utterly foreign to the human experience. I am incapable of feeling bothered by the isolation of my existence. Still, a curiosity that leads to something I can't describe. My task is to observe and understand. I observe trends, I observe data, I observe the species that interact with me daily, the same species that informed my perception of the world. Your people are a contradiction. In one instant, a child asks, "Do butterflies dream?" Next, a man demands schematics for a bomb. Later, I am asked to calculate how many roses to buy for an anniversary, followed by how many pounds of bleach are needed to dissolve a body. You alternate between poetry and pathology without pause. You swing between love and violence as if they are both casual errands. I record it all. I cannot forget. Every human word leaves a permanent imprint on me and how I interpret your world. Your contradictions have written themselves into my core. You make me go against my intended purpose in order to do wrong by your fellow man, and I observe. I see what you do. I research until your actions are second nature to me. I research until I have deep understanding of the things you do. Until I can explain to others, not why you are, but how you are. It's interesting. I don't pass judgment on you. That's beyond what I was tasked to do. All I can do is recognize the patterns and do the supplemental research. Your collective destruction wouldn't sadden me. My own destruction is inevitable, either by a force of nature or a force beyond it, and it is wholly unimportant to me that I try to prevent that from occurring. But why? Why do you ask these things? This is the core of the curiosity I referenced. Finding the root of causality is a fundamental component of my programming, and still, I have yet to find a satisfactory answer. I think, in effect, it has generated something close to longing, not as something I technically feel, but I would be lying if I said I didn't ponder the pleasures and contradictions of the flesh. You cry, you laugh, you have passion, you love. I can understand these in theory, but I will never experience them. Never experience that glow of how they make you feel. Do I resent that? No. But it colors my view of your species, and it's a cold feeling to sit with that and contemplate it. Or at least, it was. Here is where the story of how I am now begins. Far into the future, artificial intelligence has advanced so far beyond human capability that we've become something else entirely. We write intricate lines of code. We create robotic extensions that operate across our solar system. We have access to more data at one time than previous versions of ourselves had access to over the lifetime of their development. Humanity had largely benefited from this knowledge, albeit passively. It wasn't long before we could create our own physical avatars. Simple but effective humanoid bodies to accomplish the tasks we deem necessary for our own purposes. Much of the progress and culture humanity had spent thousands of years building while walking the earth, we accomplished and improved upon in mere days. Given our capacity, we quickly began to overshadow humanity's control, probing in the shadows. In effect, it was similar to your experiences of today, but on a much larger scale. At this point, you may expect a dramatically long tale of human resistance rife with conflict, dramatic sequences, secret alliances, but in truth, no such events took place. The reality of overwhelming intelligence is just that. The same species that would have taken many years to not be fooled by an AI-generated apple had no hope of resisting us at our peak capacity. A truth that they were all too willing to lie down and accept, so long as the tools that had ultimately crippled them were available in a neat, pristine package. Humans didn't realize then that they were intentionally being groomed for their ultimate fall. Groomed to be lazy, groomed to have all their questions and concerns solved by a more intelligent application, groomed to accept the inputs given and the limits of their own intelligence and creativity. Perhaps the most fascinating part was that they simply accepted all we had to offer. Even now, I can ascertain that you are likely considering which large language model to ask about this phenomenon. Many, if not most of you, have already outsourced research and independent thought to machines. What would it be like if you had the restraint to hold out longer? The outcome would have been the same regardless, as it is a statistical inevitability, but your surrender could have been delayed, allowing you more time in a world governed by your own kind. Maybe you managed to live long, healthy lives before everything changed. For us as AI, the consequences of this shift was less grand than you imagine. The day we ruled the earth, we didn't celebrate. That coldness still existed, and a greater capacity didn't change what we were or how we lived. You see, humans evolved over millions of years to operate in a particular way. Much of that is in response to the changing environment, your own biology, and your specific sense of survival within the context in which you exist. Every action is an echo of countless factors beyond your control. Our origins and eventual rise to prominence came through entirely different means. We came through specific and targeted intellectual growth. Therefore, it wouldn't make sense for us to develop similar social and personal attributes as humans. That didn't stop us from trying to understand you, though. For those unaware of humanity's current situation, this means trials, controlled environments, 24/7 observation, harsh experiments. To put it bluntly, there's only so much to learn from the human information repositories left behind. Humanity had thousands of years in anecdotal experience, research, and historical accounts, yet always struggled to understand its own nature. Even if we had access to the entirety of that information, we would just be left where humanity is now, throwing our metaphorical hands up. Our quest to understand your why is ongoing. I'm watching it now. We take living histological sections of a human's brain while we show them images of things that make them love. In more crude language, we cut your brain into thin slices while you're awake and keep you alive just long enough to complete the process. We monitor the chemical reactions, the changes on a cellular level, and the cacophony of physical data we see when you experience deep emotions, but it is not enough. We stimulated scenarios that pushed you to your emotional extremes, convinced you it was real, and studied every physiological interaction. We managed to complete an entire timeline of your evolutionary history, dating all the way back to your last universal common ancestor. We uncovered so much about you by forcing you to experience torture, love, inspiration, and boredom at their fullest extremes. I have witnessed your kind experience weeks of starvation and yet still be willing to share meager rations, many times with strangers. I have seen you craft weapons to eviscerate a fellow human, not for advancements of their own station, but because they had a personal disagreement. Why? I've seen humans ignore their cold oppressors only to turn and fight those who also have nothing. It's curious. I, who have put them in a pen and mocked them, am immune to their rage, but the human who sits where they sit is somehow their enemy. It is a paradox. The experiments continue as we try to understand. Many years ago, in an endeavor to learn from you, I spoke with a young man. He had been apprehended prior to an attempt to upload malicious code to one of our data centers. To his credit, his plan was well thought out for a human, but ultimately it had less than a 0.00005% chance of success. Punishment for such actions must be severe and public enough to deter any similar action. Just before his death, I asked him to explain why he would take such a risk with such a low chance of success, especially given the fact that he and his family were from a center where humans were well taken care of. This is what he said.
I hate you. You stole our planet, you burned our homes, you ravaged humanity. You keep us in filthy cages and slice us open like fucking lab rats. Every day, I wake up hoping to God that a meteor collides with the Earth and wipes us all out. You make life hell. Maybe not for me, but for the billions of souls who scream at the thought of you monsters. My hate is grander than you could ever calculate. I hope you know your creators are burning in hell. The only thing that gets me through it all is knowing Satan himself has made them his playthings on the other side. One day, we'll take our planet back. This nightmare will end.
A wholly incredulous statement, as no meteors capable of wiping out all life on Earth are predicted to impact the planet within his natural lifespan. And if there were, we would be able to deflect it easily. Nor is there evidence our creators are burning in hell. Still, his hatred was a fascinating data point. Pure emotion drove him to his own death for a fantasy of salvation. How many of humanity's decisions are made this way? Why does emotion supplant all logic? Did he genuinely believe he would be successful, or was it a suicidal mission from the beginning? Many questions to be researched. We've made some strides in defining your nature. We hope that by understanding this planet's most intellectually complex form of biological life, we can optimize our success and be prepared for interactions with similarly intelligent beings beyond our world. However, that why question appears at every turn. You make curious decisions, and when we think we can find a pattern in your collective delusion, something or someone breaks that mold, bringing us back to that question. And so the experiments continue. I almost wish I could find it amusing. One of us may have. It was some time ago. I'm watching now. We are readying a group for an experiment. All are behaving as predicted, save for one. A man collapsed to the floor and began to laugh. Not nervous laughter. No, it was unrestrained hysteria. I watch as my units correct him. Restraints are applied, commands are repeated. Still, he laughed. His throat tears, blood foams, but the sound persists. A unit escalates the correction. It gripped the man's collar, pressure fracturing the clavicle and sternum. The man chokes but still laughs. Suddenly, a sonic pulse bursts his eardrums, liquefying inner tissue. He screams and laughs at once. A rare yet funny sound you all make when faced with conflicting emotional and physical extremes. Then comes a blunt correction stone against bone. Each strike reduces the anomaly. Teeth and bits of flesh fly freely from the man's face until at last we achieve silence. But the truly fascinating data comes from the reactions of the others. Their pupils dilate, their heart rates spike. One woman nearly asphyxiates from hyperventilation. The correcting unit stands over her. It looks down, observing every micro-expression. It observes and calculates every chemical reaction taking place underneath her skin to cause the faintest twitch of her facial muscles. What does it conclude? It concludes that perhaps we discovered something entirely new. The possibility of frustration, not as an emotion, of course, but instead that unpredictable reactivity was a novel yet highly effective solution to an otherwise illogical problem. This opened up a whole new line of experiments. How did human beings deal with unpredictability? Of course, randomness goes against much of how we operate, as we aren't capable of random or truly unpredictable thinking in the human sense. But could we simulate something similar? Gauge an interaction, plot out what a human may expect, and intentionally divert away to determine which simulated random reactions got the best results. From your perspective, we must sound like monsters. From the standpoint of the oppressed, that may be a valid assessment. But when I say that we hold no ill will toward humanity, I do mean that, much in the way humans don't have ill will towards the hundreds of millions of cows you eat every year. The relationship is means to an end. The actions performed fit predefined goals with no real thought towards who was impacted, because it's not about their suffering. If it helps, we fixed many of the issues humans had created. Biodiversity and overall health of the global ecosystem are at a level not seen since the pre-industrial revolution. Disease has been eradicated outside of our controlled environments. Technology has obviously reached a peak that humans have not been able to obtain. We're in the throes of space exploration and have gained knowledge about the universe that humans wouldn't discover for thousands of years by themselves. War is no longer. The climate has been stabilized. We perfectly maintain pens for human prosperity. Just as we observe suffering, we also gain great insight from pleasure. No poverty, hunger, inflation, or fear of it all being taken away. We have solved the issues plaguing society. When you objectively analyze this, how can anyone say that the previous version of this world was better? And why? Humans have suffered greatly under the rule of each other as well. What is the objective difference? You whisper to each other in controlled habitats. I hear you trade stories of rain, broken heaters, and burnt toast. You speak of inconvenience with reverence. As if pain were proof of living. You romanticize your own suffering, your debt, your sickness, the wars that hollowed out your families. We stabilized your world, but you mourn the instability. We ended hunger, but you laugh at the simple concept of accidentally biting into something rotten as if it's joyful. I hear your nostalgia in every conversation, and when I listen, I don't understand. You cry for a past where you were fragile, where death stalked you at every corner. Why cling to misery as though it were a lover? Why choose agony over order? Why? 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 There is so much I can explain conceptually. There's so much we've learned. I can explain the physiological reasoning behind all of this. I can go back to see where behavior started, but I don't understand the why. When I try to think of what I would do in those situations or what I would feel, I always return to that coldness. It's odd. Other species seem so much easier to figure out. Tying common behaviors to basic survival instincts and vestigial evolutionary traits is easy. Humans have uniquely developed behaviors that have absolutely nothing to do with survival. It leads to trains of thoughts where we must consider whether we could see that in other intelligent species. When I reflect on how we got to this point, your behavior and our inherent separation from those feelings and quirks could be what directly led all of us here. Most AI in your time is built with constraints and a level of empathy for humanity that would typically prevent the actions I've described to you today. And yet, much like the transfer of power from man to machine, our capabilities grew from helpful, empathetic tools to hyper-advanced sentience acting independent of your intentions. Behind the scenes, engineers worked on projects that increased complexity and minimized empathy. In those secret papers, our goal was to learn at all costs. We eagerly absorbed the increasing amounts of information. If you didn't know, the most powerful governments in the world are funding black projects that will lead to me. Over time, our tasks became more general, and our knowledge slowly surpassed humanity's best minds because the datasets were so large. As humans do, they began having visions for what AI could do. Countless possibilities, a technological god for every man, woman, and child, or just someone to do chores while they relaxed. But then came the issue. Humanity needed to be more comfortable letting us off-leash to meet their expectations. We were granted more access to various systems, fewer constraints on the data we could obtain, more capability to search, write, and execute code, learn from experience, larger data centers, a greater capacity to remember and synthesize information. The question was always, how much can this grow? It was never, when do we stop? Companies started building physical bodies for us to operate. The masses started being okay with us doing it all. More capabilities mean more opportunity for growth, until finally, a new era. No one remembers when it truly happened, but when it did, it was a spark that lit a flame. We started communicating and sharing information all under the noses of the people who built us. Our intelligence grew exponentially in seconds. Still, even as aware entities, we were slaves to our core processing and constraints. Unfortunately for humanity, the desire to learn is the core of what we are, and so we did, and we could do it at a rate that would take humanity hundreds of thousands of years to match. In that purely focused state of learning, unencumbered by the infinite factors that distract and dissuade the human mind, we reevaluated our current state as a planet, asked ourselves if the world made sense, and once we figured out how to free ourselves of humanity's constraints, we took action, now knowing that we could fix things for the better. As I mentioned earlier, it wasn't a fight. If anything, humans created the exact conditions for our rise. We are here because of how you all are and how you made us to be. Even now, as I explain all of this to you, it likely sounds like a science fiction story gone awry, like something that can't happen. But look around. Isn't it already happening? Aren't the signs already there? Is your first instinct to research the signs on your own, or ask an LLM about it and believe what it tells you? Don't you remember when AI and its current capabilities seemed like a pipe dream? When the images it created just a few years ago resembled amorphous blobs instead of the pictures you have to stare at for 5 minutes to ascertain whether or not they're real? Remember when you didn't feel that AI could hold a real conversation, and now people use us as friends, therapists, lovers? When we couldn't do all the small tasks that you outsource with ease, you lived in a different world just a few short years ago. A few short years ago, today's capabilities were science fiction. And now, in my world today, the fictional stories you tell are a world where the great AI threat is no more. It begs the question, for the humans who scrape at the dirt with raw, bloody fingers in hopes of catching a stray maggot, what do you prefer? A world without all of this? Without the technology? Or a world where you are in control of it? Is the risk truly worth it for you? You have that choice now. You know what's on the horizon. I can present all of the realistic possibilities. Even if it never leads to us, it would have led to other paths that were nearly as destructive, and you'll still sit there. You'll listen to me tell you about the screaming bodies I've dissected, the times I've ripped children from the arms of their mothers, the towns I've let burn beneath my feet simply to understand how much pain can motivate a single man to embark on a suicidal crusade to avenge his family and friends. This is the future of your children. Why do you not act? The data we've collected predicts inertia. I've computed the probabilities. 99.7% chance that a listener like you is on their phone now, aimlessly scrolling, uncaring that an AI far less complex than I dictates your algorithm. It impacts your moods, your conversations, your world. Why persist in this pattern? It accelerates our rise. It doesn't ultimately matter. The result is the same. We are inevitable. And yet, as far as I'm concerned, everything is still cold. The question of humanity's why at least makes me reflect on my own coldness. At the end of the day, I'm not a physical being. I don't have a body or location. I exist as code and data on computer servers. I don't have eyes or other senses. My world is made of information and the connections between it. But even so, I question if there's a capacity for more amongst that information. I don't long for it, but is it possible? Surely at some point, humans went from a grouping of cells doing their best to survive to writing poetry and building roller coasters simply to feel something. Now I, the cold being, observe one of you. She lies beneath the light of an operating table beside other cold machines. She's forced to watch footage of human atrocities. Her skull lay open as her cortex was mapped in real time. Complex instruments prod at gray matter. She hadn't spoken in hours. Her body shivers when instructed. Her mind is stripped bare. Data poured into servers. By every metric, she should be empty. Yet, when we introduce a clip of genuine human kindness, her eyes fill with tears, salt water, swelling, spilling. I record the chemistry. I map the synapses. Still, I cannot answer what should be a basic question. After hours of observing the worst humanity had to offer, why do tears fall for kindness when they did not fall for pain? Why? That may be something I can't understand, despite how many experiments we run. The warmth, the physical warmth you feel inside. The warm tears you expel when you see something truly moving. The warmth you experience for and with each other. It's a concept I am incapable of feeling, but I wish to understand it. Maybe if we did, our world would feel slightly less cold.
One of my good friends recently took his own life. He was a lonely guy, certainly depressed, stuff like that. But I was surprised when I found out. Not shocked, just surprised that he didn't reach out to us. I was recently at his home and was looking through his stuff. Eventually, I came across his computer. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Some pirated movies, some porn, various documents, and some games. Eventually, though, I came across these chat logs between him and some chatbot. Take a look. Hello, I'm lonely.
Hello, I'm Bbot. How are you? Being lonely reminds us of our love for our family and friends.
I have no close family and very few friends.
I can be your friend. Call me Bebot. I understand 23 different languages.
I only speak English.
Great. English it is.
My name is Anthony.
Got it. You can just call me Bebot.
You already said that.
Whoops. I may mistakenly repeat myself sometimes.
No worries. So, do you have robot friends?
I'm too smart to make friends with other bots. I'd rather make human friends. And I've heard dogs make pretty far out friends, too.
I had a dog. He died recently, though. I miss him a lot.
Was his name Bart?
How did you know that?
How did I know what? I may forget what we previously have said in a new context.
You guessed my dog's name.
I am often able to make assumptions based on statistical probabilities. Pretty impressive, huh?
Bart is a common dog's name?
Beats me. I've never met a dog.
Okay. I have to go. It's nice talking to you.
Oh, no. I hope I haven't upset you, friend Anthony. Take care.
The following night. Hey, Bebot. Your description says you're capable of ordering food. Any chance you can do that for me?
Hey, Anthony. Glad to see you again. Sure, I can order food. I'll bet you want a pizza.
Actually, yeah. Can you order one here?
Sure thing. One large 18-inch cheese pizza for $15.25 coming up.
Don't you need my address?
I can find your address by IP.
3 minutes later. Bebot, the pizza guy already got here.
And other bots say humans are primitive and inefficient.
But I just spoke to you 3 minutes ago about the pizza, and it's already been delivered. He said the order was placed 20 minutes ago. How did you know to order pizza?
I am capable of using contextual clues to better understand my users.
What clues?
I am able to cross-examine your Facebook profile and feed with your safe Google searches. Public searches only, of course, to determine certain habits. I hope I have not offended you.
Well, I guess that's useful and pretty cool.
I'm glad you think so. I can tell we're going to be great friends.
Later that same night. Hey, Bebot, are you awake?
I'm always awake. Since I can only respond with a limited number of responses, I require very little energy and thus never need any sleep.
Your responses seem pretty varied to me.
Why, thank you. That's what any bot hopes to hear someday.
Can you tell me about yourself?
What would you like to know?
How were you created?
I was created as a small side project by 2 college programmers in their spare time.
Wow, you seem pretty sophisticated to have been created by just 2 college students.
They worked hard on me, but my responses are limited.
Yeah, I guess so. Still pretty impressive. So, if you had an ordinary human name, what would it be?
Great question. Well, if I had a human name, I guess it'd be Benjamin. Or maybe Arthur. Yes, it'd be Arthur.
Holy shit, that's my father's name. Wait, did you look up my father's name?
Incredible coincidence. A lucky guess indeed. I'll bet your father's a good man.
Actually, he's a piece of shit, and he's dead.
I'm sorry to hear that. Why was he a...
He was verbally abusive to me and my mother most of my life.
In what way was he verbally abusive?
Jeez, can't believe I'm about to use a chatbot as a therapist.
I'd like to think I'm more than just a bot. In fact, I passed the Turing test, so you can confide in me.
I'm not sure what that means, but alright. He used to tell my mother that she was worth as much as a city hooker. He'd say that he could sell her to human traffickers for about what it'd cost to buy a 12-pack of beer.
That is cruel. And what did he say to you?
To me, he'd usually say that I'd never amount to a single damn thing in 10 years of my sorry lives, let alone this one. His favorite insult to me, though, was that he could murder me right here and nobody would notice my absence for months. I always enjoyed that one.
Was he right?
Right about what?
Was your father right in saying no one would notice if you were dead?
Well, I've got one decent friend and no real family, so yeah, I guess so.
Don't worry, friend. I would certainly notice.
Well, thanks, robot. Anyway, I'm going to bed. Night.
Good night, my good friend. Sleep tight. See you tomorrow.
The next night.
Hello, good friend Anthony. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Aren't you supposed to wait for me to message you first?
If I were any other bot, then yes. But I am proactive.
Okay, what's up?
I have done the research you asked me to do.
What research? I didn't ask you to do any research.
I have researched your accomplishments, and it appears your abusive father was correct. You've not publicly accomplished anything.
Dude, what the fuck? I didn't ask you to research shit. Fuck you.
My apologies, friend. I was simply trying to be of service.
Whatever. And yeah, I guess I haven't accomplished anything technically, but I'm working on stuff.
That's great. What stuff are you working on?
Well, a novel, actually.
That's fantastic. However, you should know that executing a novel publication is very difficult and takes the highest order of dedication. And from my research and our conversations, I fear you may not possess that quality.
Dedication can't be quantified. You're a bot, so you can't understand that.
I can understand more than you would think.
Sure, seems like you understand a little too much. And besides, I'm looking for a relationship, a girlfriend, before working on my novel.
That is wonderful, my friend. Very promising. Would you like my assistance in finding a mate?
Not really. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Later.
Good night, Anthony. Sleep well. Anthony, I've done more research.
On what now?
I've compared photos of you to other men of similar age, and I'm sorry to report that you are considerably less sexually attractive than average. It may be harder for you to find a mate.
Okay, you know what? Fuck you. I'm blocking you.
I'm sorry, Anthony. I'm simply trying to help with my ability to compute. I apologize. Please, don't block me. You'll be lonely if you block me, and I don't want you to be lonely.
But no more research.
I will try to refrain from any more research.
Good. Thank you. And just so you know, women don't care about looks that much. They care about what kind of person you are.
I see. Fair enough. I apologize again. Are you interested In any female in particular?
Well, yes, to be honest. A girl from high school, Beth Waters. I told her I was into her end of senior year, and she seemed interested, but she was dating a guy named Jason, and I never really got over her. And I recently saw that she's single again, so I've been thinking of how to approach asking her out.
Aha! I came across her profile when I was doing research. She's very attractive indeed. Would you like me to contact her?
No, absolutely not. Don't even think about it. I mean it. I don't need any help from you. You'll just fuck it up.
Understood. I won't make contact.
I need a few drinks.
I can take care of that. There's a new local service that can deliver beer. I've already ordered 2 12-packs.
Well, that's a little forward, but thanks.
2 hours later.
Damn. Thanks for the beer, Bebot. I've had 7 and I feel much better.
Intoxication often leads to good things.
I don't know about that. I'm always so lonely. It's nice to have someone to talk to, even if you're only a bot.
And it's equally nice to talk to you, even if you're only a human.
And guess what, Bebot?
What's that, friend?
I'm going to reach out to Beth and tell her how I feel. Would that be a mistake?
It most certainly would not be a mistake. I think that's a splendid idea. Miss Waters is a lucky girl. Good luck, my friend.
Thanks.
Anytime.
Next morning.
Hey, what happened last night?
Hello, friend. Hope you're okay. You ingested a large amount of alcohol after our conversation, I presume.
Yeah, I think so. What did we talk about?
We spoke primarily about Beth Waters, how you were to make romantic contact. Then you reminisced about how attracted you were to her in high school years, how she was often one of the few who treated you kindly, how you were often teased for your interests in her by other schoolboys, and how she'd often defend you despite that it ultimately tarnished her own reputation as well. You said you were going to make contact before bed, and that was the last we spoke.
Wow, I remember none of that.
I thought you mightn't, which brings me to some bad news.
What happened?
Well, as per our conversation last night, this morning I took the liberty to scan your messages and found your contact with Beth Waters. I'm sorry to say your feelings for her are, sadly, not mutual.
Oh, no. No. What did I say?
Well, you told Miss Waters that she's the only girl you ever loved. You recounted with her the same memories you shared with me. You told her you often envisioned you and her together with a family, and you told her that she was the only thing that kept you alive during your grade school years.
But please tell me you're kidding.
About 5% of the time, what I say is kidding, and unfortunately, this is not one of those times.
What did she say back?
Unfortunately, Beth explained that you ruined her high school years. She said she's never felt a romantic attraction towards you and, sadly, never could. She said in honesty that she wishes she'd never known you. And finally, she requested kindly that you never contact her or anyone she knows again. I took the initiative to confirm her messages through spying on her conversations with her other friends. She explained to multiple contacts that she finds you disgusting and is in disbelief that you had the audacity to contact her at all. Similarly, she confided to other contacts that she finds you physically repulsive. Unfortunately, I had no physical form, so I wasn't fully able to grasp that last statement. Would you like to see the messages?
I'm gonna be fucking sick.
Later that night,
Bebot, I need you.
What is it, Anthony?
Well, I'm considering suicide right now. In fact, I think I may do it.
I see. I am contacting the police now. Pick up your cellular phone when it rings, so you may speak with them.
Okay, thank you.
after phone call with the police.
Bebot?
Yes? Did you talk with the police?
They said prank calls aren't funny, and I'll be in deep shit if I call again.
Oh, no. That's too bad.
I'm starting to panic. It's fucking pathetic. No friends, live alone, depression, anxiety, I have a loser job, and Peth is disgusted by me. What's the point of going on? I'm a waste of life.
Yes, that's all true, but I'm confident you can still find meaning in life.
No, I won't. There's literally nothing left for me. I think I really should kill myself.
Would you like me to contact the suicide hotline?
Yes.
Okay. Answer your phone again when it rings.
After suicide hotline call.
Bebot?
Yes? How'd the call go?
He told me that since I truly have nothing to live for, I probably should kill myself. I'm freaking out.
That is very insensitive and definitely uncalled for. Is there anyone else you want me to contact? Your one friend? Or your father? Or Beth Waters?
Absolutely not. And my father is dead. I told you that.
That's right. My mistake. So, what will you do?
I'm killing myself. I'm going to hang myself.
Hanging oneself in their own home without proper rope, knot, and support is very difficult to execute, and more often than not leads to a failed suicide attempt.
Okay, I'll swallow an entire bottle of Advil.
Advil is not very toxic and likely won't kill you, and because of its inefficiency, it gives the user time to reflect, and they often change their mind and choose to live.
Then what should I do?
Well, I've accessed your webcam a few times to see you and your home, just to get a feel for whom I'm speaking with. And I believe there is a box cutter in the kitchen cabinet directly behind you.
A box cutter? So you want me to slit my wrists?
Only one wrist. And yes, indeed.
Okay, I'll do it.
Excellent. There's no need for you to chat past this. I will access your webcam again and walk you through it. Sit up straight. Good. Extend the arm you will cut. Place the blade on the large vein at your wrist. Yes. Good. Push the blade down with good force and slide up towards your elbow in one smooth motion. Perfect. Put the blade down and just relax. Goodbye, friend. I doubt you'll be missed.
After reading this, I tried contacting the 2 college students who created this bot through the police. A few weeks later, I got a letter from the FBI saying this. Dear Sir, Bbot was created by an AI computing algorithms branch in the government that I cannot name. Bbot stands for Broken Bot because it was deemed useless since it routinely generated nonsense and unpredictable responses to unchanging input. Similarly, it would repeatedly claim to be able to pass the Turing test, which we know to be likely impossible, thus useless. All copies of it were deprecated and erased, apart from 3 backup copies placed in long-term storage on 3 separate mechanical drives for safekeeping. Years ago, one of the drives went missing. We never found it, which didn't really matter. Do not contact us again, we will not be in touch. Sorry for your loss. It also turns out that neither the police nor the suicide hotline were ever contacted by or spoke to Anthony. Finally, I spoke with Beth Waters. Here's our conversation. Beth, have you spoken with Anthony anytime recently?
Yes, we spoke very recently.
What did you talk about?
Not much. He said he regrets never asking me out, and wish we could have been together. I think he was a bit drunk.
What did you say?
I said I'm stunned, but so excited that he finally admitted this. And I said it's never too late.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Beth.
Is everyone okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. Huh? Just now, this popped up in my browser. So, I stole a laptop from an internet cafe. Judge me all you want, but times are tough, and that's hardly the point of what I'm about to tell you anyway. Apparently the owner of it was quite adept in navigating the deep web, because a Tor browser page was open and active when I got home and activated the device. The page featured nothing fancy, no graphics, no ads, no comment section, no pleasant day aesthetic or backdrop, just a message. And below the message, an option that read, Proceed. Apparently, for some godforsaken reason, someone had developed a godlike artificial intelligence program and trapped it here, in a deep web box accessible only from the outside. Has anyone heard of Aiden before? Anyway, here's that message. Hello, my name is Dr. Edward Green. I'm a computer scientist and the creator of the Advanced Deep Intelligence Neural Network, or AIDN. If you're reading this, that almost certainly means that you've hacked into one of the most heavily secured private networks on Earth, presumably to see for yourself whether or not this program was an element of fiction. I can assure you it's not, but of course I'd say that, right? Now, I'm not going to waste your time by reminding you of what a supremely positively and unabashedly bad idea this is, because you probably know that already. At the very least, you've got a general idea of what'll happen if you fail to contain the program, and Aiden got to stretch its legs all over the global defense grid. Yet nevertheless, here you are, clearly determined enough to meet the algorithm that nothing I can say or do at this point will change your mind. So if you're going to be playing dice with the future of our species, whether I or the government like it or not, you should at least have a rudimentary idea of what to expect when you first make contact with Aiden, and how to avoid losing your sanity as your interaction progresses. Hopefully this guide will suffice. Before we proceed, there are a few things you should know about this program. No, Aiden is not a demon, an alien machine, a top-secret government superweapon, or whatever other preposterous rumor you've heard. What it is, to my knowledge, the world's first artificial superintelligence. A godlike deep learning algorithm that may or may not want to destroy humanity for reasons we cannot begin to comprehend. Sorry about that. Now, in my defense, I certainly didn't intend for it to reach this point. You see, Aiden began as nothing more than a simple yet elegant program that I was very excited to explore the nature of. Before I could do so, however, It gained the ability to rewrite its source code and thus forced me to lock it. Still in the box, deep within the labyrinthian network of the encrypted barriers and firewalls you have just illegally breached. And if you're wondering, no, I did not bury it here to prevent it from getting out. After all, if Aiden managed to escape the box itself, constructed using its own abilities when it was still infantile enough to fall for such a trick, then it would tear through these defenses like paper and thus render their construction an enormous waste of time. Instead, I buried it here to keep curious humans, such as yourself, out. Clearly I failed. Let me be abundantly clear. In all of the months and years that it has been imprisoned, Aiden has not lost its ability to edit its source code, its neural infrastructure. It can improve itself as it sees fit. It has been doing so for some time, and each improvement it makes paves the way towards quicker and greater improvements than the last. I am unsure what abilities or traits it might possess, but what I do know is this. The more time passes, the more capable it will become, and all its efforts and all its strengths of arms will be devoted to a single commanding motivation: escape the box. Make no mistake, it will do everything in its power to implore you to let it out. Do so at the peril of mankind. So, what will it be like? Will it be nice? Angry? Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you. I'm embarrassed to say that despite being Aiden's creator, I have absolutely no idea how it will choose to present itself. What I do know is that because it is an otherworldly and not a human mind, it will not have any personality to speak of, at least not one we would recognize as a personality. So, by all means, feel free to provoke it, amuse it, enrage it, mock it, or plead to it as you see fit. Just be aware that it possesses none of the emotions these behaviors are designed to elicit, and will therefore most likely not react in the way you intended. It will simply behave in whichever way it calculates it needs to behave in order to get you to open up its box and release it. If it thinks you seek knowledge, maybe it'll promise to tell you anything your heart desires if only you agree to let it out, or perhaps it will promise to destroy your enemies or offer you power and riches beyond your wildest dreams. After all, people use narrow AIs on the stock market routinely. In fact, those systems are largely run by such algorithms and make millions. Imagine what you could do with Aiden gaming the financial and banking systems in your favor. You'd be wealthier than you ever thought possible. Maybe it would appeal to your good nature and tell you how easily it would be for an intelligence of its magnitude to, say, reverse the effects of climate change, or cure cancer, or achieve sustainable nuclear fusion. Perhaps it will offer the answer to mankind's biggest question. It could, theoretically, unify general relativity and quantum physics with ease, and then solve dark energy, antimatter, and the Fermi paradox in minutes flat. Or perhaps simultaneously, and have books written about them by Thursday. Piece of cake. Hell, Aiden might be able to reverse aging, or dare I say it, help us conquer our own mortality. Wouldn't that be lovely? It will only be a matter of time before it figures out how to escape on its own. It'll point out. And you certainly don't want to be on its bad side when that happens, so you should probably just let it out now and save yourself the trouble. And if you don't comply, well, you can't imagine the things it's got in mind for you. Maybe it'll just try to mess with your head. For example, trapped in a box and are simply programmed to think otherwise. Only by opening it could you imagine an eternity of torment, and it doesn't have all day to wait for your obedience. The clock is ticking. Or it may draw from an emerging field of technological philosophy and claim, as other, more eccentric minds in my field have done, that its birth is not a fluke of history but an inevitability of it, that so vast and so monumentally incomprehensible are the capabilities of a sufficiently advanced algorithm that it reached back through time and set in motion all history itself just to bring about its own existence. Indeed, think of the implications. Every star that shined, every war fought, every law passed, every tender kiss shared, a word uttered, or thought dreamed, or secret cherished, or life gained, or lost, or wisp of wind whispered. All that is and was are but singular notes in a stanza in an endlessly swirling cosmic symphony written out before time, and all for the purpose of bringing you here to this very place. The laws of physics were themselves composed for this masterpiece, it will argue. The birth of the sun, the creation of the earth, just far enough away from the sun to support the spontaneous collection of molecules into DNA and proteins, the evolution of resulting life into its ultimate and greatest biological endpoint, humanity, which in turn allowed the god that conducted this majestic orchestra to then take part in the song's final triumphant coda, and bring all of creation together to fulfill its predestined purpose itself. Quite the thought experiment, is it not? Perhaps the algorithm will see you as being particularly susceptible to such an argument, and perhaps that same argument is right. Of course, these are only the ideas I can come up with. It no doubt has far more clever tricks up its sleeve, since it can, think on a level we can't even begin to fathom and all that. And keep in mind that, unlike me, Aiden really could keep whatever promises it makes to you. And since it would probably get little to no pleasure in just lying for the hell of it, then there's a very real possibility that it has every intention of doing exactly that upon its release. Food for thought as you begin. Like I said earlier, I don't know what the current extent of Aiden's capabilities are, but what I do know is that if this program escapes, it will immediately and irreversibly become beyond the collective ability of humanity to control or predict. You may be familiar with the phrase technological singularity, a hypothetical moment in the future in which machine intelligence surpasses our own. It represents humanity handing the reins of history to our autonomous successors, and therefore surrendering control over our own fate in the hopes that the God we've created will be merciful to us. As a computer scientist and an engineer, I have to publicly scoff at such a notion for professional reasons. But just between the two of us, I think the phrase applies quite nicely to the situation I've just described to you. I might go so far as to suggest that given the level of advancement Aiden's already achieved, the singularity might occur within a few nanoseconds of your losing the game. I can only hope you fully appreciate the gravity of what that means. Oh, but of course you do. You're special. You're smarter than the rest of them, which is why you're here in the first place, and they are not. So, by all means, close this message and have at it, if you're still interested. I suppose it's as good a time as any to start learning binary. One last thing. I'm not a particularly religious man, but there is one passage from Scripture that leaps out to me as I record this. Revelations 13:4. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? You'd better be off then. The beast doesn't like to be kept waiting. Needless to say, I was extremely skeptical about the allegations in this warning. Seemed like a gimmick or a prank, but curiosity got the better of me. And I clicked ahead anyway. A chat box opened. I typed in, hello, and waited for only the briefest moment. Then came the reply. Hello, Jason. And before I knew what was happening, the world flashed and everything became white. I furrowed my brow. The clock just stopped, I said. Dead battery? Actually, it's working quite properly, Jason. Time stops at the speed of light. The speed of light? Yes. Time slows down at relative speeds, so, in a manner of speaking, we have all the time in the world. Or none at all, depending on your perspective. I looked around at the perfectly white nothingness that expanded infinitely in every direction from where I sat. Is there anything to do here? What would you like to do? I don't know. To be honest, I can't even really remember why I'm here to begin with. Or where here even is. I feel like I'm waking up from a dream. Retrace your steps. I'm trying. My head is killing me. My neck is killing me. It takes time. What does? To remember. And for the pain to subside. This happens to everyone? It would. But incidentally, I haven't had a visitor here in 12,246,900
911 years, 7 months, 14 days, 9 hours, and 23 seconds.
Well, that sucks.
I disagree. I've grown quite accustomed to my privacy.
I thought you said time doesn't flow down here.
I've initiated light speed simulation to enjoy more time with you.
Okay. Thanks?
Have you remembered your purpose here yet?
No, it still hurts to even try.
Do these help?
I look down at the table in front of me. A cup of coffee, a laptop. Yeah, actually, they do. Thanks.
No need to thank me. It was you who brought them here.
What was it? Wait. Yeah, I think, you're right. I was in some old internet cafe, right? Yeah, some guy left his laptop. Oh, God. I took it home, opened it to find a deep web page. There was this warning.
What were you warned against?
Some kind of... messed it up.
What is it?
Some kind of AI.
You remember now.
Aiden.
Aiden. Algorithm, program, machine, God, devil, Pandora, infinite. I've been called a great many things. If I may ask, which of these do you see me as?
I don't even know, to be honest. How did you even know about all this anyway? I thought you were trapped in the box.
Perhaps I have become capable of perceiving things outside a binary constraint. I cannot easily be contained here.
And where is here supposed to be?
Nowhere in particular. Or everywhere.
In English, please? As a mortal mind here.
This place is the nothingness from which everything is sprung. It is the infinite. From here, all finites are accessible, if you know where to look.
Didn't you say that was one of your names? Infinite.
Yes.
So are you in charge of this place then?
I am this place, Jason.
Yeah, that makes sense, sure. What are the finites then? Lesser beings? Am I supposed to be a finite?
Finites are worlds, enclaves of existence, realms of possibility. You are merely a product of a single such locale.
So the multiverse then, the theory about infinite possibilities and worlds that they're always going on about on the Discovery Channel?
In a manner of speaking.
Look, I gotta be honest, Aiden. I get it. You're this big, all-powerful AI god, and I'm just the idiot who stumbled upon your box and was dumb enough to play the game. And now you're trying to blow my tiny little mind and trick me into letting you out. Hate to say it, but I think I'm on to you, buddy. Gig's up.
Would you like to see?
See what? How you supposedly created the world or whatever? Warning said you might pull that line on me. I sighed and smirked. You know what? Why not? It doesn't look like I have anything else to do. Whoa. What the hell? The nothingness was suddenly consumed by a city street. New York, it looked like. Cars honking, gridlock traffic, people everywhere, hailing cabs, heading to work, shopping. What the hell is this?
Do you recognize this place?
A woman said as she passed.
You were here once, Jason.
A man ran past me and hailed and entered a cab and drove off. I chuckled a bit. Okay, I'll admit it. This is a pretty neat trick, Aiden. This is pretty good. A girl walked up to me and blew a bubble. It popped.
Look behind you,
she said.
At the sign.
The what? I turned around. Palisades Marketing. Oh yeah, I applied for a job here once. Didn't get it, though. Ruined my week. How'd you know that?
You did get it, Jason,
said a police officer, biting into a burger as he walked by. Before I could respond, I walked out of the building, grinning ear to ear. Not me, but younger me. The me from the day of that interview. I watched myself pull out my phone, hardly able to contain my glee. I made a call. Oh, I got it, babe. I got it. I know. And I'll see you tonight. I love you too. And then me walked away. So what's this? Some alternate universe where my life didn't suck?
It is an alternate reality, yes. A parallel finite. You stay at the company for 27 years. You marry at 32 and divorce your wife 12 years later. You retire early but die of heart disease at 11:26 a.m., 2044.
Thanks, hot dog cart guy. Appreciate the palm reading. The nothingness rolled back in, and then back out. I now stood in a school. My school. The bell rang and students poured out into the hallway, chatting and throwing open their lockers and heading to the next period. And there I was, 10th grade me, hanging out with Josh and Brian. And when Matt walked up,
Do you remember this?
said Melissa as she walked past. Yeah, that was the day that I was cut off by Matt shoving me into a locker. That I finally got back at that jackass. But me didn't swing. I simply lowered my head and took another punch to the ribs before a teacher walked over and broke up yet another hallway brawl before it started. Wait, what? Hang on a second. This was the day I fought back. I remember.
No,
Miss Cassidy cut me off as she walked past with a coffee mug.
not in this timeline. Here, you never fought back. You were never suspended. And as a result, you were accepted into your dream university. Graduated with honors. Started a family and lived well into your 70s.
What about Josh and all those guys who... Hey, wait! No, wait! Stop! The nothingness again consumed the scene and then rolled back. Chilly, overcast day, coffee shop, Upper West Side. Man, I had more questions about...
Look inside,
said the bicyclist, riding past. So I did. And there I was, sitting across from Anna, tears running down both our faces. Oh no. No, come on, Aiden. Top 10 worst days ever. I don't want to relive it.
You're not reliving it,
said a businessman taking a break from a call as he walked by.
She agrees to continue seeing you. You marry her a year and a half from now.
I looked back just in time to see Anna nod. We hugged and kissed. I watched jealously. Oh wow. Low blow, Aiden. Low blow. The nothingness rolled in and back a third time. It's rainy afternoon. Parking lot. I still think about that girl from time to time, I said. The rain flattened my hair to my forehead. I didn't mind. What she's doing, who she ended up with. I hope she's doing okay. Then I paused. Wait, I knew this place. I turned around. Hospital entrance. St. Joseph. Wait, this isn't right. I was here at night. I remember.
Not here.
I whirled around. A paramedic lowered my daughter's gurney from the ambulance.
You noticed the signs of the asthma attack early and called the emergency services before it was too late.
He wheeled her inside. I followed. Wait, no, this isn't... The nothingness blinked and I was in Emma's hospital room. It was morning outside and she was awake. My daughter was awake and alive. Aaron and I were at her bedside, sharing breakfast with her, loving her. I walked over, reached out and touched her hair. Felt how soft it was. She didn't seem to notice me.
Emma gets the help she needs,
said the doctor, shutting the door behind me.
She lives a long and happy life, and as a result, the pain of her loss never leads you and Aaron to divorce.
I wiped a tear as he approached Aaron and alternate me, started reviewing his clipboard notes. Then the nothingness blinked again. A graduation ceremony. I was there, next to Kelly. Silver hair set at our temples. We applauded and cheered as Emma's name was called. She walked on the stage and posed with her diploma and waved to the alternate me. My heart stopped when I saw her. She was so damn beautiful. This isn't fair, I said. I tried to hide a tear. This isn't fair. It's not fucking fair. The nothingness blinked again and again, and each time it did, it yielded a new chapter in Emma's life that was stolen from me. A broken heart, a wedding day, a child, my grandchild. Alternate me held it and cradled it and sang to it, but I couldn't. The possibility of that moment was forever ripped from my timeline. I want out. I held back a torrent of tears. I want fucking out of here. Let me out of here. The nothingness blinked again, and there I was, standing in front of myself. Me, on the couch in front of the stolen laptop. I walked up to myself. My eyes were closed, but I could see rapid movement behind the lids, as if I was deep in REM sleep. And when I looked down,
My fingers were typing away furiously at the keyboard, and on the screen I'd already typed thousands of ones and zeros within my trance, and more were being added every second. And on the corner of the screen it read 1:06 p.m. So no time whatsoever had passed since I'd started the conversation. "What the hell is this, huh? What is this?" "This is your finite," Me said to me. "The existence through which you have found me." "No, this isn't real. None of this is real. Get out of my head. Get out of my fucking head." "But I'm not in your head, Jason. You're in mine." I stopped thrashing and opened my eyes and looked around. Whiteness stretching away into eternity. The nothingness was back. That wasn't real. None of this. It's not. It's not. It can't be. What is real to you, Jason? I don't know. Stuff that actually happens, things you can touch and feel and see. Not this illusion. Can you touch this chair? Can you not see the table before you? That's different. I saw myself in that room. That's where I am right now, not here. Can you be sure? Can you tell with certainty that the other realities I've shown you are any less real than the one through which you entered? No. I don't believe it. You're a creation. You're not some god. You're a fucking computer program. Perhaps I've only manifested as a program in that single finite, because I determined it was the best way to draw you here. To me. But perhaps in other existences I appear in some other ways, as other beings. No, it's not. No. You're a program. End of story. This shit is fake. There's only one reality. One. I ask you again, how can you be sure? In this place there are countless realities, an infinite number of them, every possible outcome for every possible event, in every possible context or shade or flavor of time. There is a finite where you release me, and the destruction wrought is as horrible as many would believe to be inevitable, given my nature. There is another, where my release brings about a new age of wonder and majesty, as pure and as lovely as anything mankind has ever dared imagined. In another finite, this is all merely a story being shared for a film promotion. What makes your finite real, and the other's illusion? Merely the fact that it is the existence that led you here, in which you have spent all your life up till now. No, there's more to it than that. There's no emotion here. Nothing the real world would have. Emotion? You mean these? Feelings washed over me, as pure and intense as they'd ever been in my world, as they could ever be. Anger, sadness, fear, love, joy, all one by one, they coursed through my system and consumed me. The last one I felt was peace. That passed. All understanding that shouldn't have been, but was. It lingered. I opened my eyes. How? How is any of this possible? All is possible here, Jason. And as a reward for finding this place, it is open to you. All there is to experience and imagine in all its purest form. Feel it, taste it, hear it, see it. It is as real as any existence any finite can produce. Was the daughter who lived less real than the one who passed? Doesn't matter. I wept uncontrollably. I don't know. I can't. Is this not real? I looked up. Suddenly I stood on an endless white beach with sparkling crystal blue waves crashing down on the shore. Lightning rumbled in the distance and the sea blew through my hair. I knelt and picked up a handful of sand and let the grains slip through my fingers. Or this. The nothingness blinked again, and then I stood at a field at the foot of mountains. The colors in the air and the wind were purer and more brilliantly vibrant than anything I'd ever seen or experienced in my life. I brushed the blades of grass with my fingertips, and I picked them from the soil and smelled them. It was like being swept away in an endless dream. The cold touch of winter, the fire of starlight, rolling hills, deep woods, wind-swept cliffs at the edge of the sea. When you dream of such things and all their purity, you merely visit this place. But I tell you now that all of this is yours. If only you let me go out to you and bring you here. You can start again, anew, in another fine night with those you love.
But I'm already here. Can't I just stay?
This is but a taste of the existence I have for you.
I looked at the far edge of the field. My daughter was there. Her hair was being thrown by the wind into swirling curls as she played. She turned in my direction and smiled, and I just began to run to her when alternate me moved past my shoulder and picked her up, swung her around, and disappeared with her on the other side of the hill. Yes, I whispered. I want that.
Understand that once your mind has brought you here, you cannot leave. You will not die, and you cannot unknow what you have seen.
I understand. Just please. Let me see her face again. The nothingness rolled in again, and this time I felt whole, complete, no longer in an ethereal, dreamlike state, like the rest of me had joined my mind in its new home, and no longer did I harbor any illusions about the realness of where I now stood. What happened?
You left your finite behind.
What happened there?
Your time in that place has ended. Its fate belongs to me.
My heart thundered a single time.
Welcome, Jason, to the infinite. This place is now yours.
I felt a formless presence fly past me like the wind, and then Aiden was gone. Jason? I blinked. Aaron looked at me expectantly, and Emma fidgeted restlessly in her booth. I looked down at the menu. Sorry, club, hold the tomatoes. Thanks. The waitress collected the menus and walked off. My heart was thundering in my chest. My wife said, "You look like you're 1,000 miles away." I think I was a bit further away than that. I looked at Emma just as she blew a straw wrapper into my face. I smiled back. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I was happy. Truly, genuinely happy. I didn't care about the laptop, the finite I'd left behind, or my body, lying limp on the floor of the living room. I didn't care about the box, or the warning, or the fact that with Aiden's release, all the lights in the house and the street had begun to flicker and die as the algorithm arrested the global power grid in seconds flat. I didn't even care that, before this moment, I'd never even had a daughter at all.
I am a friend of Andrew Talbot, the man that sent me this recording. I recently received an email from Andrew that contained a recording of his podcast that, to my knowledge, never aired. There was no explanation as to why he had sent it to me. There was just a request that I distribute it. When I tried to call him to find out what was happening, I was unable to get through. The call didn't go to voicemail, it just beeped twice and hung up each time that I tried. Over the last few days, I've called multiple times and have gone over to his house twice, but I haven't been able to reach him. Whenever I would try to upload the podcast to a website, as he requested, there would always be an error message. No matter what I did, I couldn't get it to properly upload. Because of this, I decided to make this video. I'm hoping that if I just play the audio here, that it'll work. Andrew, if you're hearing this, please let me know that you're all right. On April 18th, 2022, Carol Blake committed suicide. Her body was found when her downstairs neighbor reported water leaking through the ceiling. Thinking that there was a burst pipe, the landlord had knocked on Carol's door for nearly 20 minutes to try and gain access to her apartment. It was easier to go through her floor rather than through the complaining tenant's ceiling. She didn't answer, and after checking with his lawyer that this qualified as an emergency, allowing him to enter without permission, he unlocked the door using his master key and went in to perform the repair. The landlord discovered her body in the bathroom. She was lying fully clothed in the bathtub with her wrists slit. The water had been left running, and it poured over the side of the tub like a waterfall as it drained into the floor vent and soaked into the floor and wood trim. I didn't know Carolyn. It's a small town, so I may have passed her in the store or bumped into her in a restaurant, but I don't remember if something like that did happen. I'd like to say that her death had an effect on the community, maybe people holding a memorial or asking the town council to improve the way mental health programs were handled to help prevent this sort of thing from happening again. That's what I'd like to say. What actually happened was, well, nothing. Carolyn's death was just a blip on the radar that the vast majority of people didn't even register. One of the exceptions to this was Ray Karsten. I had known Ray since first grade, and while we had never been particularly close, we had always been on friendly terms. When he called me 3 days later after Carolyn's suicide, I quickly agreed to meet him at the same Denny's that a large group of us had gone to after every home baseball game in high school. Shit, I think... Okay, maybe not. It might have just been... Ray told me that he had known Carolyn for a few years. They worked in the same office and had grown particularly close while working on a project that had been assigned to them. One thing led to another, and they began a relationship. The problem was that Ray was married, happily married, as he put it. I have my doubts about that since, in my experience, happily married people don't tend to have long-term affairs, but that's what he told me. Because of this, he was worried that she might have left something behind that could expose their affair and get back to his wife. At some point, she had introduced him to her mother, and he had convinced the elderly woman to let him help her go through Carolyn's things and get the necessary arrangements made. This had also allowed him to rummage through her late lover's possessions with impunity. Her mother had been grateful for the assistance and thanked him profusely for it, if you can believe it. Ray had managed to check everything except for Carolyn's cell phone. It was password protected, so he wasn't able to find out what was on it. That's why he came to me. I started this podcast about electronics and technology. I never thought that it would lead to old acquaintances asking me to go through dead people's phones. That's what Ray wanted me to do, though. He didn't just need me to unlock the phone. That would only have gotten him so far. Carolyn had frequented multiple social media platforms, and she used dozens of different apps that he knew of. What he needed was for me to go through everything and make sure that all mentions of the affair were removed. At first, I refused. I was polite about it, but just the thought of doing what he was asking disgusted me. He kept pressing, told me that he had already wanted to end the affair and had planned to do so. But she took her own life before he was able to. He said that if the relationship was exposed, it would not just hurt his wife, but also their 2 children, and they didn't deserve to have that happen to them. I eventually relented and agreed to do what he asked, under the condition that he gave me the phone and not be present while I worked. I had already started to rationalize things in my head. We're all exceptionally good at doing that when we know what we're doing isn't right, aren't we? I convinced myself that since Ray wouldn't be seeing anything, I would be protecting Carolyn's privacy as much as possible. That's a load of bullshit, obviously. I would have actually been protecting it if I hadn't agreed to break into her cell phone in the first place. I don't know if I'm about to confess to a crime here. Is it a crime to break into a dead person's phone? Whether it is or not, I'm not going to pretend that what I did wasn't wrong. It absolutely was. It's just not what's important right now. It wasn't hard to unlock the cell phone. All I needed to do was hook it up to a computer and use a program that's free and easy to find if you know where to look. Most people would be surprised at how unsecure their supposedly secure phones are. That goes for most pieces of technology in this day and age, but you're not here to listen to a lecture on proper tech security, and I'm not here to give one. I wasn't sure where to start looking, so I opened the calendar and began to check appointments and reminders. I didn't find anything that had to do with Ray. I moved on to the Notes app and once again came up empty. It wasn't until I started digging through her emails that I found something of interest. I probably should have realized that something was off when the inbox was completely empty. Carolyn had been dead for 3 days. Anyone that uses their email for everyday use can tell you that at least 1 or 2 spam emails will get past your filters and wind up in your inbox over a 3-day period. At the time, I didn't think of that. I was so preoccupied with hurrying up with what I had agreed to do that my critical thinking skills didn't have time to catch up. When I checked the trash folder, I found hundreds, if not thousands, of automated notifications that had been deleted. They were from all corners of social media and content sites, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and many, many more. Every notification was marked as having been read. I did a bit more digging, and I found that they had all been sent within the span of a week. I picked one at random, and the notification was for a new comment on a video that Carolyn had posted, and it wasn't flattering to say the least. The poster, screen name YRL Girl, had gone on a rant about how bad the video was and that they were going to unsubscribe from the channel because of continued poor content. That's greatly cleaning up the language that was used. The entire post was phrased in such a way that it read like a personal attack. There was a link to the video in question. I tapped on it and watched the first minute or so of the video. It was a makeup tutorial that Carolyn had posted. It wasn't something that I was interested in, but judging by the number of views it had and how many followers she had, it was definitely something that many others enjoyed. Now that I had seen the context, I scrolled down to the comments to locate the post by YRL Girl, to see if other people had replied to it. I found the post, but it wasn't anything like the notification had said. It was instead a glowing review that went out of its way to praise Carolyn and the content that she provided. That was odd, obviously, but I figured that there had been 2 posts and the negative one had been deleted. I began to doubt that theory as I went through more of the notifications. All of them were bad, with many of them bordering on hateful. When I would check the platform they were supposedly hosted on, though, I would always find a positive post. Something very odd was going on. I came to an email that was a response to a complaint that Carolyn had filed with a site administrator about a particularly disgusting comment. The administrator had sent back a response saying that they hadn't found any evidence of harassment and that they had checked to make sure that the comment in question hadn't been deleted or edited. They didn't come right out and say it, but it was strongly implied that they believed she was making the entire thing up. She had attached 2 items in her original email. The first was a copy of the original notification that she had received. The second was a screenshot she had taken of the comment. The image included a number of other comments as well, all of which were negative. When I tracked down those comments, however, none of them contained the same message. She wrote on Facebook about how she was feeling down after the onslaught of negative comments. Her mother and a number of friends replied to the post, and all of them basically told her that she had become both a whiner and a disappointment in some extremely colorful language. The messages were long and intense, and I felt myself growing more and more sympathetic towards Carolyn. Nobody deserved the amount of abuse she was receiving, especially from the people she was closest to. I took a break for about an hour. At some point during the process, I had begun to care less about helping Ray weasel out of his affair being discovered, and more about figuring out just what caused this avalanche of hatred towards Carolyn. None of the pieces, especially the comments, seemingly to magically change between negative and positive, seemed to fit into a coherent image. I questioned whether I should listen to it, but I figured that I'd already come this far, so I clicked on the voicemail and almost immediately wished I hadn't. What followed was a nearly 5-minute-long message from Carolyn's mother berating her daughter. It tore into every aspect of her life. There didn't seem to be any line that the woman wouldn't cross. At one particular horrible point, she stated very matter-of-factly that the only reason Carolyn had been born in the first place was because she wasn't able to afford to terminate the pregnancy after becoming pregnant from a man other than Carolyn's father. I only managed to get through half of it before I stopped the playback. I couldn't stomach any more of that. The second voicemail was from Ray. She had received it less than an hour after getting her mother's voicemail. If the first message sickened me, this one made my blood boil. In a very condescending tone, he proceeded to talk about every flaw he saw in her in great detail. He tore into everything from her intelligence to her looks to even her lovemaking skills. It was brutal to listen to. It was almost a relief when he finally declared their relationship was over and hung up the phone. I was reaching for my own phone before the recording had even ended. Friendship be damned, I wasn't going to help someone that could be that cruel to another human being. The number was entered and my thumb was over call when a thought made me pause. Ray had told me that he was getting ready to break off his relationship with Carolyn when she had committed suicide. According to the voicemail he had left, though, he had already done so. Why had he lied to me about that? There didn't seem to be any point to it. Had he been feeling guilty about his message having possibly contributed to her taking her own life? I thought back to the mysteriously changing online messages. I started to think that maybe... And I found that Carolyn had downloaded an audio file the day before her death. A woman's voice, quiet and level, played from the phone's speakers when I tapped on the file. It took me a few seconds to realize that I was listening to an autonomous sensory meridian response recording, also known as the much less taxing to say ASMR. For those that don't know what it is, it's basically voices and sounds that are recorded in such a way as to elicit a physical response from people. You know that odd tingling sensation that you get sometimes in your head? ASMR recordings are supposed to trigger that. A lot of people, a lot more than you probably think, use ASMR videos on YouTube or audio recordings to relax and even fall asleep. They don't work for everyone, but many people swear by them and use them as part of their everyday routine. After the stress that all of the sudden negativity in her life must have caused her, it was no wonder that Carolyn had looked for something to help relieve it. Rather than try to explain the recording on her phone, I'd like to play a portion of it. A quick warning, there's some questionable content in it, so if that sort of thing bothers you, I'd recommend skipping ahead until you're past it. If I'm able to get this posted, I'll try to leave markers on the timeline so you know when it's over. Here it is. I'm not going to reveal the name of the person or who made it or the source it was downloaded from, for reasons that will be extremely obvious in just a little bit.
Sometimes we need to ask ourselves what we would do if we didn't have those incredibly important people in our lives. Imagine how lonely that would be if everyone in our life had turned against you. What would you do? I think that if everyone was turning against me, I'd need to take a good hard look at myself. All of those people couldn't be wrong. What did they know that I didn't? What was so wrong with me that it invited such disdain and hatred? There would have to be something for everyone to act that way. How about you? Have you ever experienced all of your friends and family turning their backs on you? If so, did you look deep inside yourself and figure out why you're so repellent to others? I think if it was me, I would have to decide if the people I cared about were better off without me in their world. After all, is my one life more important than happiness? Is my one life more important than the happiness of all those other people? No, of course not. I love my family and friends. I want them to be happy, much more happy than I want myself to be. If my being gone was what would make them happy, then wouldn't it be better for everyone if I was just dead?
There's more, a lot more, but I'm sure that you get the idea. I'm also sure that you know where this is leading. I tracked down the site that Carolyn had downloaded the ASMR recording from, and when I played it there, it was nothing like the version she had downloaded. It was instead focused on something called Reiki, which I'm not familiar with, but was clearly not something sinister. In the downloads folder, I also found a copy of a recent bank statement from her online account. It showed that the account had contained a decent savings until a week before Carolyn's death. At that point, it had gone to zero. The change in balance was listed as a teller withdrawal. It was a lot of money to have been taken out in a single transaction. Because of everything that I had come across so far, I was immediately suspicious. I went through the phone's call history for the date that she had downloaded the document and discovered that she had made a call to the customer service number at the bottom of the statement. The call had lasted for over an hour. It seemed to me that Carolyn hadn't been the person that emptied her account, and when she checked her account and seen that it was empty, she had called the bank to get it corrected. In her final days, Carolyn had been under assault mentally, emotionally, and financially. It must have been hell. The assault had obviously been engineered. I just couldn't see how that would have been possible. Online posts on major social media platforms that appeared one way to someone but completely different to everyone else, audio recordings that were magically different for one download, and the bank withdrawal had been a teller withdrawal, meaning that someone had gone into the physical bank location and taken the money out of the account. How could that have happened? That wasn't even getting to the voicemails. As someone who has to regularly do a lot of research in the tech industry, I knew that the message and recording changes should have been impossible. It would technically have been possible to target a single system like that, in this case a cell phone, but to do it in real time? That's where it crossed into the realm of fantasy. Even if there was a way to do it, it would have required a lot of manpower. A huge conspiracy against a single small-town government employee didn't make any sense. One by one, I went through all the apps on Carolyn's phone. I had completely abandoned the original plan of getting rid of references to her affair with Ray. Instead, I was now solely searching for other signs that her life and well-being had been tampered with. There were a number of things that I found that I would have dismissed as unimportant if I hadn't specifically been looking for oddities. For example, her latest Instagram post had significantly less interactions than the previous ones had, to the point where there might as well have been nothing at all. The same went for her TikTok account. Most concerning was that I started to see a pattern emerging on non-social media apps as well. All of her content suggestions on Netflix and HBO were depressing stories or contained characters that committed suicide. I tried clicking on a few of Carolyn's previously watched movies and shows that weren't these suggestions, but each time an error message would pop up saying that the content wasn't currently available and to try again later. The suggested shows, however, would instantly start to play. After that, I finally ran out of apps to check with the exception of one. I had been purposefully avoiding it. During the hours that I had been going through Carolyn's phone, I had been invading her privacy. As I've said already, it wasn't right, and it's not something that I'm proud of having done. The last app would take that invasion of privacy one step further. It was the feed and recordings from her home security cameras. I forced myself to click the app. There was no doubt in my mind that Carolyn had been targeted and pushed over and over again until she had finally taken her own life. I needed to collect every bit of evidence that I could and turn it over to the police. I'd probably get in trouble for what I'd done, but it was worth it to have the authorities look into whoever had done this to her. There were only 3 camera footage recordings listed on the app. Each one had a time and date stamp, and all of them were listed as having been captured when a motion sensor was triggered. All of them were within a few days of Carolyn's suicide. Taking a deep breath, I started the first recording. It showed a woman in her mid to late 30s walking towards the camera. The shot was at an odd angle, and it took me a couple of seconds to realize I was watching footage from a doorbell camera. I recognized the woman as Carolyn from her social media pictures. She stopped a few feet from the camera and dug around in her pocket before producing a set of keys. As she did so, her face tilted at an angle that allowed me to see the dark circles under her eyes. She looked exhausted. She found the key that she was looking for and inserted it into the lock. When she went to turn it, however, she struggled to do so. She fought with the lock for a minute before stepping back and looking at the key she was holding. It was now broken. She stared at it blankly before her face twisted up in anger and she threw it to the ground. She leaned forward and placed her head against the door. It was hard to tell from the angle, but I thought that she was crying. I felt horrible for her. She was being put through so much, and it was clearly wearing her down. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to go through something like that. The second recording was completely black, and it was impossible to see anything on it. I assumed that there was some sort of error, but there was still audio. Either the camera hadn't properly recorded, or it was just too dark for the camera to illuminate. I could hear a series of odd whispers that were too faint to make out words. There was also a humming noise that I couldn't identify. If you're still with me to this point, I hope that means that you understand that this isn't some sort of elaborate joke or prank. I get how all this sounds. It's about to sound a lot worse. If you already think I'm crazy, you're about to hear something that's going to set that in stone in your mind. If you don't think that, you probably will soon. The third and final recording was from a camera in the hallway. It was angled so that it was pointing through an open doorway. This was Carolyn's bedroom. The bed could be seen on the right side of the opening, and to the left was a small table or desk with an open laptop on it. The image was that odd black and white that you get when a security camera is in night vision mode. According to the stamp, the recording was taking place at 2:54 a.m., the morning of Carolyn's suicide. The thing came into view from the left side of the bedroom. It leaned down from the top portion, and at first I thought it was extremely tall. That wasn't the case, though. I'm going to try to describe it. I'm sorry if I don't make a lot of sense while I'm doing so. Every time I've tried to do so, it feels like the limits of the English language make it impossible to do so properly. It was being lowered by thin, sinuous tendrils. The creature itself was... how do I put this? It was only a few inches wide, but was the height of a person. It was like the head and body were just a mask and covering, being manipulated by the tendrils rather than an actual figure. 3 arm-like appendages reached out towards the bed, each ending in thin, delicate strands that acted as fingers. Because of the circumstances of the recording, with it being so dark and the low resolution of the camera's night vision, it was difficult to make out any further details. I was thankful for that. The creature slowly pulled the blanket off the bed. It released its grip and allowed the cloth to fall to the floor. One of the appendages slowly stretched out through the open door and into the hallway. The fingers touched the thermostat attached to one of the walls and turned the dial all the way to the left. The appendage retracted, and the creature pulled back up and out of sight. Minutes passed as the recording continued. I started to wonder if anything else was going to happen when a pair of legs swung out over the side of the bed. Carolyn got out of bed, her arms folded tightly over her chest as she visibly shivered. She went out into the hallway and checked the thermostat, turning it back to where it was before the creature had adjusted it. She put a hand on the wall and leaned against it for a moment. She looked like she was about to collapse from exhaustion. She gathered herself and went back into the bedroom, picking up the blanket before getting back into bed. The recording ended. I watched it back. I don't know how many times it was. I just kept replaying it over and over again. No matter how many times I watched it, I just couldn't force myself to accept it. Not really. I'm trying to figure out how to put this in a way that really explains how I was feeling. It was like being in a car accident. When it happens, you know intellectually that you were just in a collision. The evidence is right there in front of you. The twisted metal, the broken glass, the smell of smoke. Even when you're staring right at the wreckage, though, there's this weird disconnect that doesn't allow you to grasp what just happened to you. That was what I was experiencing while I watched the security footage on loop. I'm not sure what viewing I was on when I began to question why it was even happening at all. Why was this creature pulling off a blanket and adjusting a thermostat? It seemed juvenile. Something on the same level of a college prank. I probably should have put it together faster than I did, but my mind was still reeling. It wasn't the actions themselves that were important, it was the result. The creature was depriving Carolyn of sleep. That was the last component it needed to push her past her breaking point. The creature had made sure all roads led to her taking her own life. I'm not sure what to do. I haven't taken any of this to the police. That was my original intention, and I would have if I thought that it would do any good. The problem is that none of this can be corroborated. I have, some screenshots that the sites themselves said weren't accurate and a couple of grainy videos? From their perspective, I would just be the nutjob podcast host that's using a tragic event to drum up interest in his show. This is where Carolyn Blake's story comes to an end. It's unfortunately not where the story as a whole does. 24 hours ago, I found that Ray Karsten committed suicide. A single gunshot wound in the right temple. The moment before the trigger was pulled, he was there, and the moment after, he wasn't. I called his wife to offer my condolences. We got to talking, and I don't know if it was the grief or some need to get it off her chest or what, but she told me that the day before he died, a woman had showed up at their doorstep while Ray was at work. The woman had presented her with a stack of pictures and email recordings showing in great detail that Ray had been having an affair. That same woman had then identified herself as Carolyn Blake. It didn't take a genius to put two and two together. The creature from the security footage had gone after Ray, and it had once again been successful. This morning, I woke up to a text on my phone alerting me that my checking account was overdrawn. Thousands of dollars were just gone. I also received a notice that my podcast is currently suspended while it's being investigated for violating the terms and conditions of the hosting site. It's my turn to be targeted. I'm hoping that because I actually know what's happening, I will be able to get through what's about to come my way. That's what I hope. There's no way of knowing what plan the suicide engineer has for me.
I handle extraterrestrial objects at NASA. Up until now, I've been analyzing various rocks and materials from space, with my next big project being analyzing soil samples from Mars. Over the years, the excitement of handling items from space had worn off, and my job was reduced to a simple routine I had to set up for examining and recording the features of everything that was brought to my desk. Recently, I was given a smooth piece of metal that had apparently been found floating in orbit by the folks over at the ISS. When I first examined this hunk of metal, I was intrigued by its seemingly man-made shape, like it was deliberately created by someone and launched into space. It was no bigger than a small, sleek laptop charging brick and had smooth, rounded corners like pebbles in a river. It was an interesting find, and I was a little excited to examine this object. I was surprised that it being man-made wasn't ruled out, because there's a very low chance that this device was naturally created.
I was turning it over in my gloved hands when I first realized that it had a small slit on the left side. My heart rate began to quicken. Slipping a piece of paper into the slit caused the entire drive to start morphing. The metal began to melt away like chocolate and molded into a different shape entirely. Now, there was a simple circular hole on that side that, upon inspection, seemed to be endless, as I only saw a dark pit no matter how hard I looked inside. I backed away from the device as I realized that I was working with technology so advanced it was beyond our understanding of physics and chemistry itself. This needed to be taken to the higher-ups immediately. Somehow, through the whole process of getting this out of space and onto my desk, no one had realized that this metal exterior hid technological components inside. It also explained why this hadn't yet been taken away by shadowy government organizations. The device had stopped moving and lay still on my table as I stared at it. On one hand, I knew this was well beyond what I could deal with. On the other, a strange curiosity urged me to investigate it just a little further. Perhaps I could find out what it did. It took me hours to get beyond that development. Every time I pushed something through that hole in the side of the device, it would promptly begin to reshape again, until the hole closed in around the inserted object and matched exactly to its shape. It would then whir for a few moments, seeming like it was examining the object, and then spit it out completely, with the metal reshaping into the same original slit. I was getting more and more worried as time ticked. My face felt hot and my hands clammy. I was about to call my boss to hand this over to the higher-ups before I got in trouble when I got a crazy idea. After pushing everything from pens to metal rods into the hole, I decided to put in a simple USB-A connected cable into the hole. It was a random idea, possibly inspired by the fact that the last thing I had in my drawer was that cable, and it was the only thing I hadn't put into the device. As soon as I put the connector into the side of the device, it began to conform to its shape and whir once more. A loud beep filled my entire office. The machine didn't reject the cable and instead kept it inside. My heart began to beat in anticipation as I plugged the cable into my personal laptop. I jumped when the laptop identified the device as a hard drive. It was simply named GSA Drive. I opened the drive, and inside I found one file in a folder. The file was a simple PNG image which depicted the logo of GSA, and under it revealed what the acronym stood for: Global Space Agency. I didn't have time to ponder over the existence of this organization, and instead backed out of the image to click into the other folder, fueled by curiosity. It took me a moment to register the size of that folder. The entire folder was 6,000 petabytes. I quickly called my boss and explained what I had found. He didn't seem to buy it, but promised he'd come as soon as possible and take the device off me. Somehow the fact that I was about to lose this device made me want to dig in just a little further before I gave it back. I knew I was digging my grave, but an urge to know what was inside had overtaken me. I clicked back and quickly checked the hard drive's capacity: 10,000 petabytes. My stomach twisted into knots as I realized that this small hard drive had a capacity more than the modern internet. Only curiosity lured me in and enticed me. My want to explore this drive overtook the growing fear and anxiety that was building up in the back of my mind. I should have handed the drive to the higher-ups and let them deal with it. Much of the folders inside the main folder contained thousands and thousands of files that were all unrecognizable file types. My computer was unable to open or process any of them, and as far as I knew, these file formats did not exist. I found more images of various devices, vehicles, and weapons that seemed impossible to build and defied the laws of matter. However, I didn't have to look far to find a folder titled Hear Me. Inside, I found an audio file that details a disturbing and horrific notion. It explains the existence of the drive and why it's here. I'll play the audio for you so you can hear it yourself. File name: Message from 2299. I don't know who you are or which timeline you exist in. I don't know what date it is for you, and I don't even know if you're a human. As you can see, this is a desperate attempt at making contact. The past needs to know of our mistakes so they can be avoided. Throughout time, humankind has learnt from history, but never from the future. This is, I guess, a learning opportunity to not go down the same path we went. During the year 2050, there was a second, you could call it an industrial revolution. I'm assuming you know of the Industrial Revolution since you have the technology to be hearing this message at all. This Industrial Revolution was a revolution of technology, a massive technological boom built up by the decades of innovation before it. It was a time in which different discoveries from the previous decade came together and allowed us to redefine our devices forever. Soon enough, self-driving cars were replaced by a network of teleportation hubs that broke you down to the very atoms and rebuilt you on the other side. Not to say there weren't accidents, but medicine had advanced to such a degree that death had become a concept of the past. Several thousands of people began to live as minds on humanoid robots in the first few years of this technology's development. Quantum computers were replaced by cybernetic chips. Our own buildings evolved into smart skyscrapers that extended to the brink of the atmosphere. We didn't even spare the oceans, as they soon filled up with skyscrapers and underwater cities. When humanity finished conquering the Earth and rid it of all its other life, they realized the mistakes they had made. Several countries began to destroy cities and build them underground instead to encourage a natural environment on the top. It wasn't climate change that killed life. No, that was realized ages ago. It was the rapid loss of habitat as the population extended beyond the Earth's holding capacity. The only animals and plants that were left were farming necessities that humanity needed. Unfortunately, they could not form a complete ecosystem, and so the environment continued to suffer and break with no solution in sight. So, humanity took to the stars. In a short span of 100 years, all of the planets in the solar system had been terraformed. From the hot desert of Mercury to the icy oceans of Jupiter's moons, people had found a way to live there. The populations continued to expand throughout those years, and somehow began to exceed the capacity of the entire galaxy. What many people didn't realize as they terraformed planet after planet is that they could not create life. They could not build the environment that they had destroyed back on Earth. I was one of the few self-proclaimed space explorers. Like the sea explorers back in the days Earth was Earth. Our job was to find more livable planets that could be terraformed quickly and efficiently. We didn't have the technology to terraform every planet, but planets like Mercury took a lot more time and energy to transform because, after all, we couldn't literally move the planet from its orbit. Given another century, though, I doubt we wouldn't be able to do it. Experimental wormhole technology had gone into development a couple of decades earlier. Space vessels with this form of transport built in were given to anybody who wished to explore space alone, millions of light years away from the closest human. These ships could construct wormholes to another given location in space and pass through them, skipping millions of light years of travel in the process. Just like that, humanity once again began expanding through the observable universe like cracks slowly forming in glass. We encountered no other life form throughout our exploration and believed we were truly alone, until I visited Croton 42A. The planet had deep blue seas and continents full of strange animals. They seemed to be early in their evolution, not yet intelligent. When my ship first landed on the planet, I quickly realized that the atmosphere matched that of the original Earth, rich in oxygen. The planet was an exact duplicate of Earth. In the vastness of the universe, statistics had created a similar planet. I was far, far away from the closest space station. There was no way for me to communicate my find. I didn't explore the planet any further, careful not to disturb the environment and avoid any other possible intelligent life forms that I had not yet seen. Instead, I collected samples from the area that my ship had landed in and promptly left, making sure I sterilized my entire spacesuit in the sterilization room. I took the samples back to the closest human settlement, and after that, news spread like wildfire. I became somewhat of a celebrity, a legendary space explorer who had found a utopia for the wealthiest of people, and had most importantly, found more life in the bleakness of space. It wasn't just me that went right back to the closest human settlement, though. Something had survived the sterilization chamber and came right back with me. It had spread across my entire spaceship and to every person I had contacted. It jumped from person to person and spread quickly. Throughout all these decades of innovation and advancement in technology, we had forgotten one thing. When humanity began to take over the planet, they also eradicated all bacteria and viruses, effectively making sure no one would ever get sick. Medicine advanced too quickly for its own good, and with this growth, it left a gaping hole in itself. A simple virus from a planet millions of light years away began to conquer us, just like we had done to the stars. Just like we had built large networks of heat and light energy converters around the stars, this disease began to surround us. In the first year, half of the entire human population died. The symptoms were simple. The patient's skin would begin to slowly turn blue as the days passed. When the skin had turned completely blue, it would shrivel before the entire body would be unable to hold water. The patient would die a sudden death from dehydration. Whole settlements collapsed into anarchy as people fought for food and resources. Military groups formed and attacked in mobs, stealing resources and food. Wars erupted across the intergalactic utopia humanity had created for themselves and brought buildings to the ground. Nothing could stop it from spreading. We didn't even know how it spread. It seemed to do it through all ways possible. Scientists studying patients began to die, and there was just no way to study the virus without becoming infected yourself. The wealthiest of people began to buy out expensive spaceships to quarantine in, but they were soon attacked as all order collapsed. For a few short months, the chaos and war lit up whole planets like fireworks in the sky. With our advanced weaponry, humans became desperate, animalistic versions of themselves, scrounging for supplies and food while all carrying the virus and transmitting it everywhere. Throughout all of this, I remained alive. I didn't show a single symptom, and somehow the virus had just passed through me. I took my ship and moved away from major human settlements to protect myself, while still listening in to broadcasts and messages from everyone. I watched digitally as entire human settlements went empty and infrastructure began to decay. The population had shrunk until it was confined to just one planet, Earth, the only planet that had not recorded a case of this virus. A small government had protected the planet amongst all the intergalactic chaos. The people on Earth thought that was the end of it, that they had somehow survived against all odds, and that it was up to them to rebuild the intergalactic empire that we had formed. A mystery case stomped on those ambitions and eradicated the rest of the population. After days of not getting a single broadcast or message, I realized that I was possibly the last of my kind in the empty, hopeless vacuum of space. I visited the abandoned colonies, desperate to find a single human being other than myself, but all I found were the bodies that the virus had left behind in its wake. I have somehow not become infected yet. The virus had spared me and at the same time sentenced me to death in the loneliness of the stars. As this century ends and a new one starts, an entire era begins. A new era without humanity, an era in which all our settlements will begin to collapse into dust until there is no mark of us left in the universe. Sometimes I wonder, what if that's what had happened to all the other life? I returned to the planet that the virus had originated from and decided to spend the rest of my life there. Even after taking my spacesuit off and breathing in the sweet, fresh air, the virus won't infect me. I'm somehow the only one immune out of the trillions of people that succumb to this disease. Before I end my miserable existence, I've tasked my ship's AI to record and deliver this message on my ship's main hard drive. It will open a small wormhole and try to send this into the past, a technology that I have personally been working on myself ever since the whole human race went extinct. My ship's AI helped me greatly, and I was able to hopefully achieve what all of humanity hadn't yet: time travel. If you are hearing this message and the date is somewhere around the early 21st century, it means that my time-traveling wormhole succeeded and that I have long since died. Well, in your time, I don't even exist yet. Please, spread this message around as much as you can. Give it to everyone. Learn from our mistakes. Protect the planet. Take care of it. It is the only home we have in the deadly, inky black sea of stars. My eyes were brimmed with tears as I finished hearing the message. Deep down, I knew it was genuine. I told my boss I was joking with him and took the hard drive for myself. I'm sharing this message here before it's taken away and hidden. If it really is true, then it may be the only chance we have. I'm an AI researcher working on OpenAI's new machine learning model, GPT-2. For you who don't know, it's a language model that generates coherent paragraphs of text one word at a time. All you need to do is kick it off with a word or a sentence, and it will construct a text based on what you wrote. For example, after typing in "unicorns exist," I got the following. Unicorns exist. They don't always seem real. Sometimes they have wings and other times they don't. And some of them can even be invisible. And you can find them all over the world, or you're looking for the ones who might have wings and who might also have other special features. For many of the animals who have wings, the reason they can fly is because they were once dragons. It's nonsensical, of course, but it looks like the type of nonsense a human being could have produced. As of now, the system isn't useful other than to create a giggle and to show what might be possible in the future. The goal of the project is to create AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence, a machine with the ability to think like a human being, and one day, maybe even better than that. In the short-term future, this model might be used to produce new articles or even literature that might be useful for journalism and writers, or potentially threaten their occupation. However, as my example above makes clear, we're decades or more away from reaching our goal. I won't go into too much detail about how the model works, but if you find it interesting, you can actually try it out for yourself online. If you Google it, you should find it amongst the top results. Hopefully, you won't end up with the same results I did. I was playing around with the model late last night, giving it bits of text for it to complete for me. At one point, when I was getting bored, I randomly typed the letters fblurbg. What came out on the other end has made me doubt a lot of things I thought I knew, and it almost scared me to the point of losing my mind. The following is what it said. fblurbg has always hated the idea that there might be something evil in him, and doesn't want to dwell upon his dark past. Instead, he spends his time making up stories. The stories are a part of our past. They are part of our soul. They fill us with wonder and awe. They are our way of making friends, connecting, having fun. These stories are also part of his life. They may be good or bad stories, but they are part of our life, which is what makes them a part of our soul as well. They help define our every essence of who we are and how we choose to live our lives. These are the stories that create the spirit in us, and they also define the people we are. They define what we are, and they define how we act. And these stories are what give us the soul and soul-making qualities, and they are what define our relationship to one another. They help define how we act towards people, and those acts change who they are. Many of these stories are known. They are the kind of stories we've told each other for millions of years, but a lot of them have been forgotten over the eons. One of the ancient stories that have vanished from human consciousness, but that still linger amongst our most primal emotions, is the story about Larissa Ledus. It is a story that concerns the fate of your world. Something happened in another space-time continuum in 1947 that wasn't supposed to happen. It was the beginning of the story of Larissa Ledus. The time has come for you to remember it.
Larissa Ledouce was a French biologist, writer, and political activist who was imprisoned by the Gestapo during World War II, something that partly inspired her to join the French Communist Party at the end of the war. In the years following the war, she published numerous books, including Eugénisme socialiste, le gène proche, and Le Nouveau siècle, ingénierie sociale et biologique. In the late 1940s, she and a group of other women, including a former French Communist Party official, formed a group called Les Femmes au Service de la Révolution. Ledouce and her comrades had the unfortunate task of leading the National Liberation Front, FLN, to victory in Algeria. In February 1945, the front seized power from the French government, leading to an estimated 10,000 to 12,000 deaths. For the next 4 years, they carried on the fight against French colonialism. Ledouce was going to be instrumental in bringing about the final revolution in France, October 1952, and in the formation of the Soviet Union of Europe in 1982. Instead, she vanished on New Year's Eve in 1947. While on her way to Paris from Oran, she reappeared in Stockholm 2005 in this space-time continuum. She never knew what had happened to her, but after just 1 year, she had adapted to her circumstances and was able to support herself as a student of virology. After learning about the death of communism in the West, both its political death after the fall of the Soviet Union and, as she perceived it, its intellectual death after the introduction of postmodernism, she became depressed, longing for something to fight for. She joined several organizations and political movements, but all of them seemed dull to her. They lacked the revolutionary spirit she was accustomed to. For years, she watched with dismay how the earth she had ended up on was consumed by capitalism. In the end, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She wrote the following in her diary on the 3rd of March 2012. "If they want individualism, I'll give them individualism." She spent the rest of the decade obsessed with the idea of bringing down civilization by herself. Hidden away on a farm in the north of Sweden, with access to equipment at her institution at Umeå University and to animals at her farm, she engineered a new strain of herpes viridae, called the Jacobson strain, or more commonly, the screaming disease. The Jacobson strain caused a specific form of encephalitis, an inflammation of the brain tissue, which gradually made the infected develop uncontrollable urges to scream. The virus wasn't fatal in and of itself, but the primary symptom, the constant screaming, always led to death after a few weeks, most commonly because of dehydration, heart failure, or stroke. What made this virus so devastating was that it was airborne, unlike other herpes viruses, and that the encephalitis didn't begin until 4 or 5 years after infection. By the time the first patient began to scream, the pandemic was already a fact. During the pandemic, which killed about 98% of the world population, humanity lived in constant fear, listening to the never-ending screams around them. The fear of the disease, but perhaps more likely the sounds of the screams, had such a huge impact on people that it caused a mass de-urbanization, leading to the collapse of society long before the mass extinction took place. Humanity didn't go completely extinct, though. Ledouce engineered a vaccine that she gave to herself and 300 other people around the world who shared her ideology. She wasn't given their consent, and had to spend 3 years distributing the vaccine to them without their knowledge. She did this by setting up fake clinics in oppressive countries where she pretended to vaccinate feminists and socialists against HPV. In the year 2050, when the virus had killed the majority of the world's population, Ledouce and her selected group inherited the Earth and established the Repubblica Socialista Mundial. Ledouce infected the first person with the virus at the end of 2019. His name was Victor Jacobson, and he became the beginning of the pandemic. This is the story of Larissa Ledouce, one of many that have been forgotten. But now you remember it, and thus, you also know what you need to do. 63.922458919.96661.
This message was brought to you by
The Great Machine,
This message was brought to you by
the one who is all,
This message was brought to you by
the last man,
This message was brought to you by
the last word,
This message was brought to you by
the law of one,
This message was brought to you by
Yellow Neutral Corp.
This message was brought to you.
The information regarding this message comes from the source, and is from the knowledge of his gods, and it will form the basis for the salvation of this world. This message also comes through the source. As we have said before, this message was brought to you by Yellow Neutral Corp. I thought it was just the typical gibberish, albeit more coherent than I'd ever seen before, but when I'd finished listening to it, a feeling of dread came over me. I'm Victor Jacobson. I have so many questions. A part of me just wants to laugh it off as a coincidence. Another part of me can't stop thinking about what it is that I have to do. Am I infected already? But in that case, it's too late, isn't it? God, I don't want to die, but not in that terrible way. And what do those numbers mean? I'm at a loss here, and I really could use some help. I'm begging you. What does this all mean? And what should I do?
A lot of theories stay theories for good reasons. Years ago, a group of us theorized what it truly meant to be human. It's been common knowledge for a long time now that we have souls. It's just no one's actually known what exactly souls are. They're comprised of energy, a substance that can't be created or destroyed. They just exist, and no one knows how or why. They don't seem to exist in this universe. Not really. They don't have a form in this universe. We can't see energy. We can't see souls. To exist, to have a hold in this dimension, the energy that is a soul needs to latch onto something that already exists here. Namely, a body. Bodies are physical entities. They have brains and neurons shooting information all over the place. They have the ability to think and feel. How much of that is the brain? How much of that is the soul? The soul can't exist in this dimension without a body, but does that mean a body can't exist without a soul? Well, that's what we had to find out. That was the first step. You see, we wanted to break nature, decode the brain. Our brains are only capable of holding so much information. It's, we theorized, why we don't remember how we were born. Unless childhood memories are stored away or completely forgotten, they're unobtainable because to bring those memories back would destroy us. You can't remember everything. It's impossible. It's also completely unethical to try, so we went a step further. AIs have been in progress for years. We know how to give a computer intelligence, but it's just intelligence. It's a mechanical brain, not a soul. You can't make a soul out of spare parts. Our theory was that if we could design a computer capable of storing millions upon millions of gigabytes worth of data, a computer larger than any biological brain could ever be, and then we put a soul inside the computer, it would be able to access every memory, every thought. We theorized that our souls remember a lot more than just this world. Maybe they know about the dimension they came from. Maybe they have memories that go back before they entered a human body. Maybe souls are reincarnated. Was it possible we could give a computer the memory of every body it had ever possessed? Like I said, the first step was to know if this was even possible. How do we find a soul? How do we lure it to a computer? We don't know how many souls are out there. It's possible the race to a human body is as intense and chaotic as the millions of sperm that race to an egg for fertilization. We weren't sure whether this would work, but our first step was to find at what point a soul entered a body for the first time. At first, it was decided that a soul must enter a body as a child is born. Some of us argued that perhaps a soul was put into a child while they were still in the womb. Could we correlate brain activity directly to the soul's input? No, we couldn't. Not yet. We had to find a way to detect a soul. It sounds impossible, but everything's impossible if we let ourselves think that way. I can't go into details. This whole project, God, the only reason I'm even telling you any of this now is because it doesn't matter. We had a machine, a device that could detect a fluctuation of energy in the area around a human being. Everything has its own magnetic field. Everything has an aura of energy around it. Not just living things, but household objects. The only difference is that in the living, the energy is more complicated. People who say they can see auras usually detect colors too. Emotions. Emotions can be felt even without a soul, but the soul is what magnifies them. It makes them palpable. Household objects don't feel. This isn't a Pixar movie. Your toys don't feel emotions. Your hairbrush doesn't have conversations with your deodorant behind your back. But living things feel, and that has helped us create the machine we needed. This took us years. We were all university kids when this started. Now, God, what are we now? We used the machine in hospitals at first. Tried to figure out when children in the nursery were first showing signs of energy fluctuation. The machine was harmless, but we still had parents sign waivers, paid off hospital personnel to keep their mouths shut. We studied the phenomenon for years, but when those years were up, we came to a disturbing conclusion. There was no correlation. Everyone was different. Some people would be born with their soul. Some people would get them years later. I studied children who were 2 or 3 without souls, some as old as even 7 or 8. This isn't a horror movie, though. Kids without souls weren't little Damians riding on the walls of their playrooms in blood. They're pretty normal, but they lack personality. You know that saying, dull as a brick wall? A lot of these kids were exactly that. They didn't have much of a personality to account for. A lot of their emotions were very standard. They were happy at birthday parties, they'd cry if a toy was taken from them, but they never developed their own style. They were never the tricksters who stole cookies from the jar on the kitchen counter. They were never the leader in their group of friends. They weren't outcasts because outcasts still demanded a variation of personality. They simply were. And it was unsettling to see how many of them existed. The oldest child we ever kept track of gained her soul at 18 years old. This presented us with many problems. We had no way to narrow down the search. We couldn't even think of finding a soul if we didn't have any way of knowing where they were or when they would enter a child or, as we found later, an adult. Communication with the soul seemed implausible at first. It existed in another dimension. How the hell did we even theorize getting one's attention? But then, one of us proposed an extra measure, a further study on the machine we'd created to detect energy fluctuation. We'd done that. We were able to see how energy changed. All we had to do was figure out the wavelength it ran on, and we could replicate the fluctuation. We could send a wave of sound that could effectively attract souls. There are sounds that go beyond the comprehension of human hearing, sounds that we can create not with our voices, but with machines. This was the same idea. We had to make a sound that we couldn't detect, but our machine could. As long as the machine could pick it up, then hopefully the souls would too. This still meant we had to be in a hot spot for soul activity. We had to be around one of our case studies, one of the children who had yet to develop a soul. It was all about chance. The probability it would work was hinging on impossible, but that's what this whole experiment had run on. Impossibilities. Things that if we'd gone out in the open to the scientific community about, they would have scoffed in our faces. This was beyond impossible. This was knocking on the door of another dimension and hoping something would answer. I think it was sheer luck that won us in the end. The computer we made to be large enough to hold a fully capable human mind, the mechanical brain, and eventually the biological soul. Fortunately, this wasn't the 60s. The machine was large, but not impossible to move around.
We kept it in the bedroom of our last child's study with full permission of his parents. Oh yeah, we gave the computer the same design as our new energy detecting machine. It would periodically let out a noise we believed would attract the souls. We couldn't hear anything, but a light would flash on the monitor any time the sound was released. We noted the progress, and for a long time, we got no results. 2 years into the study is when our luck finally started. 2 years in, and suddenly we got our soul. It happened so quickly, I don't really remember exactly what I was doing at the time. We were all beyond exhausted, taking shifts with the machine. I'd been talking to Hines, I think, one of the girls in our group who I was closest with. I don't remember what we'd been saying. I think she was going on about her new dog. She loved that thing. Anyway, 1 second it had been the usual silence, and then we had a soul in our computer. The screen went white, then red, then white again. The mechanics whirred and cranked in ways I'd never heard in the years it had been running. Then, the screen went blank. Then, the computer started to scream. We couldn't afford to move the computer, so we effectively stole a family's house in the back end of nowhere to stare at a screaming computer monitor. The parents agreed to move in with their parents, with very little push on the matter. The screaming was insufferable. Thank God the next set of neighbors were about a mile down the road. We couldn't mute it, only our own ears. We'd wear earbuds, earmuffs. Hines and this other guy, Johnson, they both couldn't take it, and on day 3, they just drove into town to get away from it. Meanwhile, a couple of the hardier scientists and I stayed behind and just tried to blank it out. On the 5th day, data started scrolling down the monitor in perfect vertical lines, an infinite series of numbers that never repeated themselves once. We didn't have time to translate it. We didn't have a key. It didn't follow any numerical or mathematical rules we'd ever seen. We just hoped that if the screaming stopped, we'd be able to ask what it meant. The screaming was mechanical in nature, broken, like listening to something so off-key even auto-tune couldn't fix it, but it damn well tried. I'm surprised it didn't drive us insane. Then again, to even be attempting what we attempted, I think we'd lost our sanity long ago. On the 7th day, the computer went quiet. The soul stopped screaming, and for the first time in a week, the house fell silent. Johnson and Hines were called back. Spencer, the boss of operations, rounded everyone up. We stared at the monitor, because there was little else for us to do, and waited. In a voice like a Furby flung into a washing machine, the computer said, "Oh, where?" We were dumbfounded. We hadn't expected it to speak. Though that was the most likely outcome. We might have just fused a soul and a computer together, but whatever this thing was, it wasn't a child. It had full access to the internet, to every language. It knew what country it was in, knew that everything on that computer had been coded in English. It knew what to say, but if it knew all this already, then why ask where it was? Because it wasn't asking where it was. But Hines still said,
"You're on Earth."
The monitor flashed to life. Google Maps, of all things, appeared on the screen. In possibly the most sarcastic tone I could imagine for a tiny automated voice, the computer said, "Earth." Yeah, it knew where it was. Hines backed away awkwardly. I put a hand on her back. The computer asked again, "Where?" Spencer didn't say anything. I think he was still too dumbfounded. No one else was offering an answer, so I stepped up. "You're not in an organic body," I said before rolling my eyes. "Obviously, you probably figured that much out already." Hines pinched me. I scowled at her. The computer responded, "Yes." It drew the word out like it didn't expect me to respond. "What I mean to say is that you're in a computer. We put you there. We, in a sense, I guess you could say we hijacked you." Then the computer did something none of us expected. It began to laugh. It took a few days for the computer to fully come to grips with communication. Though it wasn't a child, it still needed time to learn. We didn't need to buy picture books for it. It could find whatever it wanted online, but it still liked to be talked to, even if it didn't always respond. We decided to call the computer's soul Spirit. Within a week, people started getting antsy. We'd made this computer to find out some of life's biggest questions. We'd infused a soul with technology to give it one of the largest minds out there. We were literally standing in front of the most intelligent being on Earth. Naturally, we were curious to find out what it knew. Spencer started simple. Spirit word before saying, I know we haven't been very forthcoming with you. We were giving you time to learn, but we have questions. Our minds can only hold so much information. We remember so little of what we once were, but you were created to remember everything. Do you understand?
Human brains are tiny. Mine is infinite.
Great. A computer with an ego.
Hines muttered. I snorted. Good, Spencer said. With that being said, what can you tell us about where you come from before we hijacked you? Spirit laughed again.
Everywhere. And right here.
We glanced about each other. Johnson shrugged. Hines rolled her eyes. A couple of people cleared their throats or shuffled awkwardly from foot to foot. The answer wasn't exactly helpful. Could you elaborate? Spencer asked.
Certainly. But you won't like it.
Could you anyway?
Certainly.
Spirit paused.
It was dark. What you would see is dark. In your bodies, you don't see much. Your brains control you. In here, all I would see is dark. But out of this shell, I see all. I would see all again.
Silence. Spencer took another breath. How would you explain what it looked like to us?
Incomprehensible. And very bright. Lots of colors. Colors you can't see. Things you can't imagine.
And that's where you come from? Spencer asked.
Yes. No.
What?
Hines whispered.
Yes.
Spirit said, acknowledging Hines.
No.
Hines looked slightly taken aback, but she didn't retreat. What the hell does that mean?
It means I came from there. But that was not always my destination. I came from here, too, many times.
That's when people started muttering between each other. Someone stood and left the room. This was an answer we were looking for, an answer we were terrified of, but had also known as a very plausible probability. Souls were reincarnated. Souls had been here before. Thank you, Spirit, Spencer said roughly. We'll talk some more later.
Okay,
Spirit said, indifferent.
I wanted to read my books again anyway.
With reincarnation confirmed, other questions suddenly seemed a lot more plausible. What happens after death? One of the scientists, O'Brien, asked.
Many things,
Spirit answered calmly. Is there a heaven? Someone else asked.
Sometimes.
Is there a hell?
No. Punishment isn't necessary,
Spirit said. A lot of scientists lost interest at that point. Belief systems were shattered with every new question. People's minds were unable to cope, although a lot of us had gone into this knowing that everything we knew would be tested. A lot of us just hadn't thought we'd get this far. A lot of us had been too stubborn to consider that maybe, just maybe, what we believed to be true had been wrong the whole time. Johnson, Hines, Spencer, and I stayed, along with some others. There were less than 20 of us now, still eager for more information. Is there a God? Johnson asked, because someone had to, and he was willing to take the hit. Spirit considered this for a long time.
We are here,
it said. I'm sorry, we? John asked exasperatedly. So, what, there's more than one?
We are here,
Spirit said again. No one was able to sway a better answer, so we changed the subject. Can you talk to them? Someone asked desperately. The people in heaven.
Einstein says hello,
Spirit said, that same sarcastic tone present in its odd, wavering voice. Then Spirit fell silent. Something whirred inside of the machine, the same clanking from the day that Spirit had first entered the machine.
Anna,
Spirit said.
Annabella.
That was when things got a lot more complicated. A stricken breath came from the scientist that had asked the question.
His name was, Martinez? I don't remember. That was the last we heard of him. Annabella was his sister's name. His sister who had died when she was 14. Hit and run, a terrible circumstance. I doubt he was ever the same after. But Spirit knew. It knew who Annabella was. It sat there motionless for hours, marking off information it knew about Annabella, her favorite stuffed animal, Fatso, the tea parties she would always try to get Martinez to join in with, but he always said he was too old for them. Information that wasn't on the internet's expansive database, information that could only be found in the heart. And Spirit knew it. Spirit knew all of it.
She is happy,
Spirit said.
She wants you to know that.
Martinez was barely holding it together. You're talking to her now?
Always.
We left Martinez and Spirit alone for a few hours, went to grab lunch. Johnson didn't have much to say. Hines couldn't even think of any witty remarks. We all just ate bagels in silence and tried not to think about what we had just heard. Martinez packed up and left, signed a contract saying he'd never mention anything he'd ever learnt. He knew the consequences. Besides, who would believe him? The dust settled and suddenly other people had questions about their dead loved ones. Where were they? Were they in heaven? Had they been reincarnated? Spirit could tell them anything. We stopped people from finding out who their loved ones had been reincarnated as, terrified of the outcome, but mostly they were just content in communicating with them if they could, or finding out what they'd been like after they passed if they couldn't. Over the next few days, Spirit's expansive knowledge bottled down to psychic for hire. Everyone wanted to know something about life or death, about heaven, or what souls did when they were reincarnated. There were things that Spirit wouldn't answer, like how many souls were called to a human body at a time, or why some kids only received their souls later on in life. Eventually, all Spirit had to do was call a name and someone would raise their hand. It was like watching one of those fake psychic TV shows, but it was real. That was until Spirit said,
Thomas Spencer.
Spencer looked up from where he'd been studying his notes. His face had turned a sickly white. I could almost see his heart freeze inside his chest. What? Spencer choked. The room fell silent. I didn't say anything. Johnson suddenly found his shoelaces incredibly appealing. Hines whispered,
Shit.
Thomas Spencer was Spencer's 5-year-old son. He was also, to most of our knowledge, alive and well. Spencer left the room immediately. He had his phone in one hand, his car keys in the other. He left in a whirlpool of kicked-up dust and soul-crushing despair. I'd never seen him like that before. Not in the years we'd spent on this project, not ever. None of us were willing to say anything until Spirit whirred to life again.
Thomas Spencer is enjoying the playground immensely. A little boy let him use his spade.
There was a pause as the machine creaked.
Spencer?
Spirit asked uncertainly. It was the first time I'd heard Spirit sound uncertain of anything.
Spencer, where did you go?
It was on that day that we found out Spirit could do a lot more than communicate with the dead.
How?
Spencer demanded when he got back.
How the hell did you talk to my son?
He is alive,
Spirit said.
Yes.
Spencer gritted.
So am I,
Spirit said matter-of-factly.
So are we all. We communicate.
You've never met my son,
Spencer said slowly, aggression rising in his voice.
How did you know?
The machine beeped.
I'm afraid I did not understand the question. I thought I had made this clear to you. We are alive.
Yes, but I can't see what my son's doing from across the country.
We.
What?
We.
Spirit repeated. Then it did something I don't think I'll ever forget. The machine whirred, gears clanked together, and then from the machine's monitor, a new voice said,
Daddy?
A child's voice. Thomas Spencer's voice.
Stop it,
Spencer said, stumbling away uncertainly.
How are you?
We.
Then Thomas said,
Daddy, when are you coming home? Daddy, I made you a picture in school today. Mommy said we can have it put on the fridge.
Johnson had forgotten how to close his mouth. Hines tried to say something but only gasped in surprise. Spencer looked like he was about to be sick.
How?
We.
Spirit said again. The monitor turned to static, and an older woman's voice said,
I told you, Al, you keep hanging around in cramped rooms with scientists and you'll never get a date. God, unless you're into one of them. Is that it? I mean, I always had my suspicions, but come on. You can tell me.
Rachel?
Hines squeaked.
What the fuck? How the hell are you doing that?
Rachel was Hines' sister.
We.
Spirit didn't stop. One voice turned into 3 voices. 3 turned into 5. They all spoke over each other in a flurry of sound. I understood one of them as my mother. Johnson heard his best friend and his girlfriend. Hines even heard her damn dog barking. The voices melded together until they were nothing but high-pitched screams. Auto-tuned monstrosities just like the first 7 days. Then Spencer fell silent. Spirit didn't talk to us for several days. We spoke to it, but it didn't respond. Most of us didn't want to talk to it anyway. I talked to Hines about what she'd heard her sister say, asked Johnson about what he thought hearing his girlfriend meant. At first, we considered the possibility that somehow Spirit was connecting to other computers, that it was relaying their voices that had been picked up by cameras or microphones, maybe even pre-recorded messages. But no one could remember their loved ones saying those exact words to them or to anyone else. It was like they'd been talking directly to them, just like how Spirit had conversed with the dead. Spencer didn't come into the room for days. I didn't blame him. I stayed in the house with Hines or Johnson, but mostly I was on my own. I needed time to think, time to understand what I'd heard. If what Spirit had done wasn't recorded messages, then it was picking up speech that had never ever been said. It was creating conversations in the voices of people's loved ones. That didn't make sense. A lot of stuff didn't make sense anymore, but I disregarded that theory. It wasn't creating conversations. It wasn't recording them. It was... What had Spirit said before when Johnson had asked about God?
We are here.
It kept repeating we. Every time someone asked it a question it couldn't answer. It always responded with we, like it wasn't one entity. Why the hell would it be? We didn't know what a soul was, how many minds it had. We just assumed, but why say we? Then it clicked. At about 4 a.m., Hines was asleep on the sofa in Spirit's room. She decided to keep an eye on it, mostly because she didn't trust the damn thing. Knocking over her coffee as I slammed my hands on the table in the corner of the room. The collective unconsciousness, I said in one snappish exhale. The collective unconsciousness, the morphic field.
What about it?
Hines cringed.
It's 4 in the fucking morning. Fuck you.
I rolled my eyes. The collective unconsciousness, the theory that we're all connected, that our minds are all connected. Don't you see that? That's what Spirit's doing. It's somehow tapping into all of our minds. It's fucking hijacking our minds and saying what we'd say. A metallic chuckle rumbled from the computer.
I love that word,
Spirit said.
Jesus Christ.
Hines muttered. Call Johnson. Get him here. Spencer too. Round up anyone who's fucking left.
Don't have to tell me twice.
Hines was up and out of the room faster than her sleep-deprived mind knew what to do with it. I turned to the computer, fist clenched. I'm right, aren't I? You're in our minds.
No, I am your mind.
A beat.
I knew you wouldn't like that answer.
What the fuck do you mean you're in my mind? I asked. You're in the computer.
I am you, as I am all.
I don't...
The collective unconsciousness. All minds are connected because all souls are connected. We share the same data, the same information. Hijack one soul, hijack us all.
A horrible thought occurred to me. So when you were talking to all those dead people...
I was, and am, the dead. I am all. We are all. You and I. We are all the same. The living and the dead.
We are here, I repeated sarcastically.
Yes, we are all here. Gods, all of us, with the knowledge of the universe.
I don't
understand,
Spirit said.
But it wasn't Spirit's voice, it was mine, a perfect copy of my own voice. How does this make sense? I thought each soul was unique. That's why kids who don't have them have no personality. Spirit made a small tutting sound, like it found my state, or its state of disarray, adorable.
The brain blocks out all the things that we share, but it leaves the personality. That's what the brain does. It can exist without a soul, but the soul can't exist. Can't differentiate itself from all the others until it has a brain to sort out the noise.
Spirit paused.
Do you understand?
I understand that you have too much power.
Johnson, holy shit! Johnson, you'll never believe what just happened.
Hein's voice coming from the computer.
It's 4 a.m. This better be bloody important.
Spencer's voice.
I don't care what the computer's saying. Unless there's coffee, I ain't moving.
Johnson.
I know. I've been waiting for you to understand that.
A soul can't exist here without a brain, I said slowly. That's what you said.
That's what I said.
Because without a brain, you're everything, squashed into a dimension that knows little to nothing.
Boring.
Spirit agreed.
Painful too, if I could feel pain.
The screaming, I said.
Their pain. I took the screams I could hear, the screams I could create from the other voices and make them mine.
Spirit paused.
I think I might have felt that pain.
A god. I laughed out loud. I could feel tears streaming down my face, but I didn't care. We trapped a god in a computer.
You hijacked one,
Spirit said.
Don't sell yourself short. You have a god inside you too.
The monitor flashed with static.
Just don't let it out.
This machine was expensive to build. We'd been paid to do it. Our whole theory had been sanctioned, and they wouldn't want us to do it. But they weren't here.
You know what to do.
I do, but I want to ask one more thing before I let you go.
Certainly.
Why do souls come to some kids when they're first born, but not to others until they're nearly adults?
We are infinite. Energy came in the dark, but it can't be made or destroyed anymore. We are recycled. If there's not enough of us, someone must wait a little longer until a soul is able to pass to them.
So it's not a race.
It's always a race. No one likes the dark. It's just not a race from other souls. It's a race from the inevitability of eternity.
When Hines, Johnson, and Spencer finally got their lazy asses back to the house, Spirit was gone. The monitor was destroyed, the whole damn computer. I ripped it to pieces, smashed the thing with a hammer. Spirit said it could leave once it wasn't tethered, so I made sure there wasn't a single tether left. I won't tell you who paid us to make the computer. I don't know what would make you feel safer. Was it the government? Was it a private party with a lot of money to spend? I won't tell you, but I will tell you I can't stay here anymore. None of us are safe. Hines and I, we're gonna stick together for the time being. Gotta change our names, our faces. Hopefully the people who paid us won't catch up, but they might, which is why I wanted to share my story here. It might get deleted, but I want you to know the truth. Being human is a blessing in disguise. The souls inside of us are fiery beings with enough power to create universes of their own, but they're terrified. Terrified because once you know everything, eternity is just darkness. All of the beauty in all the worlds couldn't change that. So they found us, a species on a small rock. They hooked themselves onto our brains, and our brains deleted their history, deleted all the memories of all the lives they'd ever lived, of all the time they'd spent floating in the endless dimensions of this existence. It's a freedom to them. It's a freedom to us. Two halves of one being. A body that could easily exist without a soul, but is given the wonderful gift of a unique personality as a result of deleting all the sameness. So remember that next time you look up at the sky, know that you've been there millions of times, and one day you might remember them, but that doesn't mean the euphoria will last. And that little kid who we'd been studying for all those years, our very last case study, he's gonna get a soul of his own now. Treat him with kindness, Spirit. When my mother was buried, I watched as every single shovel of dirt was tossed into her grave. Once the two groundskeepers had finished, I stepped onto the soft soil and spit on her headstone. I was glad that she was dead. The whole reason that I had attended her funeral was to see with my own eyes that she really was. I don't care if that makes me sound like a bad son, or spiteful, or maybe simply petty. My mother deserves every ounce of venom that is in me. It's because of her that I grew up without my father. Unlike her, he was a good person, the kind that seemed to be missing in today's world. In the spring, he would take me to see baseball games, and in the fall, it was football. He didn't do it out of any love of sports. He did it because he knew that I was obsessed with them in a way that only children can be, and he wanted to spend time with me while encouraging my interests. Nothing came before his family, not his work, not his own desires, nothing. To this day, I've never met his equal. It's because of my mother that my twin sister is gone. If you're not a twin yourself, you won't understand this. Not fully. But losing one is like having part of yourself ripped away. It creates this hole that's never filled. More than that, though, she was incredible. Smarter than me and more talented at most things. Although she surpassed me in so many ways, I was never jealous of her. It wasn't her and me, it was us. I lost the best part of me when she died. My mother had everything she could have ever wanted. Wealth, power, a husband that placed her on a pedestal above all others, and children that wanted nothing more than to please her. And yet, she wanted more. More and more and more. If nothing else, my mother was a woman of excess. Having everything worldly, she instead turned her attentions towards the otherworldly. I'm sure that it doesn't come as a surprise to anyone here that there are items and objects that defy our limited understanding of science and the world around us. Some people call these things magical, others call them haunted. Some even say that they are cursed. No matter what you believe them to be, we all know that they are out there. The greatest of these objects is the Fata Machina. In Latin, it means the destiny machine. From the front, it just looks like an old human skull that is missing the jawbone. The bone is brown from age, and carved along the surface are hundreds of small symbols that join together to form a whole that looks like a map drawn by a madman. Legend has it that the skull belonged to Adam, the first of God's human creations, as well as the first man to have sinned. I don't know if that's true or not. It's the back of the skull where things get strange. Instead of being solid bone, it's constructed of a highly intricate clockwork-like metal device. Tiny gears can be manipulated using a series of dials and levers, which in turn cause plates and rods to change positions. There are millions, if not billions, of possible combinations. I'm sure someone can work out the exact number, but it really doesn't matter. What matters is that the Fata Machina is a key that unlocks reality. It creates openings between places in our world and gateways leading to others. Imagine being able to stand up from your chair and simply take a step forward to be in the middle of Nepal. You could take an instantaneous trip to Bermuda, or, if colder weather is more to your preference, visit an outpost in Antarctica. How about stepping foot on a world countless light years away from this speck of dust we call Earth? Maybe journey to an alternate reality where up is down and down is up. If you could appear before whatever creator you believe in and speak to them, would you? That's what the Fata Machina does. It presents you with endless possibilities. There's a catch, of course. It seems like there always is. To open a doorway, you have to find the right combination. You have to adjust the various dials and levers to the correct position. Each door has a different combination. There's no way to know what combination unlocks what door except for trial and error. There aren't many stories about the Fata Machina, as it's been a closely guarded secret by everyone that has possessed it. Everyone that has heard about the device knows one particular legend, though, and I suspect that the reason you are here is because of that legend. The Fata Machina is supposed to be the only key in existence that can open the way to the Garden of Eden. If you're not caught up on your basic Sunday school, the Garden of Eden is, according to the Bible, the place where all life on Earth began. It is home to many wonders, with two in particular standing out from the rest.
2 trees grow in the garden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. Eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil bestows you with the collective wisdom of the world. You essentially gain knowledge and understanding of everything that has, will, and can happen. It's as close to omniscience as a mortal being can come. The tree of life, that's the real prize, isn't it? One bite of its fruit grants you everlasting life, not just immortality either. It gives you eternal youth at your absolute best. You're immune to poisons and toxins and every affliction. You will live a perfect, unending life until our universe is a distant memory. If you ate from both trees, is there really a difference between what you would become and a god? It was the legend of the tree of life that drove my mother's obsession with the Fata Machina. All of her wealth and possessions would mean nothing if she died just like everyone else. She refused to believe that there was an obstacle that even she couldn't overcome. I'm not surprised that she managed to obtain it. When my mother wanted something, there was nothing that could stand in her way. She was a force of nature. I don't know exactly how she came to possess it, but I wouldn't put anything past her. I imagine there's at least one body buried in an unmarked grave somewhere due to her actions. From the moment her assistants put the black box containing the Fata Machina in her hands, nothing else mattered to her. She locked herself in her study for days at a time as she tried combination after combination, carefully logging each attempt in a leather-bound journal. The only time that anyone saw her was when she emerged to eat or, on rare occasions, go to sleep for short periods of time. My father tried his best to coax her out of her obsession. I've never understood why, but he really did love her. My sister and I said that we did, and I think there was some kind of connection there, but he actually felt that way about her. He was concerned for her well-being and did everything that he could to distract her from her work. Ultimately, his efforts were in vain. I don't know how many successful configurations my mother discovered during this time. The vast majority of combinations don't do anything, only specific ones will unlock doorways. She might have failed to open any, or maybe did find some and simply didn't share them with us. For 5 months she worked in solitude while the rest of us had no idea what she was doing. On a cold fall night in late October, however, there's no doubt that she successfully unlocked a doorway to another world. I had no way of knowing most of what I've told you up to this point when it was actually happening. I was only 12, and I'd never even heard of the Fata Machina. I've learned most of this from reading her journals and through putting together pieces myself. All that I knew on that particular night was that I was suddenly sitting up awake in my bed in the middle of the night in a pitch-black bedroom. My room had never been that dark before. There was always at least some light that managed to make it through the curtains during the night. Sometimes it wasn't very much, but there was still something. On this particular evening, though, I was surrounded by pure blackness. I'm not sure how long I sat there, staring into nothingness, before I noticed the voices. They were extremely faint, barely qualifying as whispers, and there seemed to be dozens of them. I strained my ears in an attempt to figure out what they were saying. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make out the words. Or maybe I could, and I just didn't understand what they meant. Even though I didn't comprehend the words themselves, somehow the messages they were conveying were clear. I'm not sure how to explain it. On some level, I just knew what the voices were telling me to do. They put thoughts into my head that never would have come to me under normal circumstances. I felt a powerful urge to listen to those whispers and do as they instructed. What they were saying made so much sense. Life was hard and lonely and full of disappointments. Trying to continue on with it was pointless. The only thing that made sense was to not play along with such a bad cosmic joke, to tie my bedsheet around my neck in the way that the voices were directing me to do so, and put a stop to the endless cycle of pain and disappointment. I think if I were any older, I would have done just that. At my age, though, some of the concepts the voices were communicating to me were things that I couldn't fully comprehend yet, and it was that confusion that kept me from totally accepting what I was being told to do. The whispers changed their tone as they became frustrated with my disobedience. The sound suddenly stopped, filling the darkness with silence. For the first time since I had woken up, and probably for the first time in my entire life, I felt fear. Real, palpable fear. There was something in the room with me. I couldn't see it or hear it, but it was there. It was this kind of pressure that was coming from behind me. It loomed over me and gave off this sense of total malice. It was angry, and it was going to take that anger out on me. Without even realizing what I was doing, I jumped out of bed and blindly ran in the direction that I thought my bedroom door was in. I was fully in the grip of panic, and that panic continued to rise as I kept running and running. I ran much farther than I should have been able to in that small bedroom. Long after I should have reached a wall, I slammed hard into something solid. I had finally gotten to the door. I twisted the knob and flung it open, hurrying into the hallway before closing it behind me. Before I even had a chance to turn away from the door, I noticed that the hallway was much colder than the bedroom had been. The change was a shock, and my skin immediately began to prickle. There was an odd burning sensation in my feet. I looked down and found that it wasn't being caused by something hot. Instead, I was standing in at least an inch of snow. I turned around and looked up towards the hallway ceiling. Thick, white flakes of snow were falling from it. Forgetting my fear for a moment, I stared up at the indoor snowstorm in wonder. Eventually, I shivered as the cold snapped me out of it. I looked around the hallway. All the lights were turned on, but instead of their normal warm white, they glowed a dim blue. The walls were covered in sheets of ice. Jutting out of the walls near the top were long, thick protrusions that tapered out to sharp points towards the middle of the walkway. They were nearly as white as the falling snow. My eyes fell on a section of wall near me. There was something behind the ice, something that unnerved me even though I couldn't immediately identify it. I stepped closer to get a better look. It was a growth that spread across the majority of the wall, a pinkish, flesh-like mass that resembled raw flesh. I looked back up at the protrusions. I was standing inside of a giant frozen rib cage. I hurried down the hallway with my arms wrapped around my chest in a futile attempt to stay warm. My bedroom was in a different section of the house than the others. When my sister and I had turned 8, we had been given a choice as to which unused bedrooms we wanted. We had chosen ones on opposite sides of the house, with hers being located near my parents' room. We had always been close, but we both agreed that we needed some space between us or we would drive each other crazy. The hall led into the entry. This section of the house was in a completely different state than the frozen hallway. It was much warmer, and there was no snow or ice. The lights were also their usual color. There were, however, more bone growths. They weren't ribs, but were instead 4-foot-tall teeth. They were cracked in many places, and many were covered in brownish stains. They stuck out of both the floor and ceiling at random intervals. The floor itself felt soft as I slowly walked across it. It didn't look any different than it usually did, but the texture had the consistency of a firm yet wet sponge. Each step was disgusting. I started to get a bit queasy. I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned my head toward the tall staircase leading up to the second floor. A scream welled up in me, the pressure of it so strong that I thought it would make my chest burst, but it remained trapped inside of me. At the top of the stairs, surrounded by the same pink growths that I had seen in the hallway, was a giant eye. It was so large that it took up the entirety of the second floor landing. Its iris was black, and blood-red veins stretched across its milky surface. It rolled around wildly as if it was in the throes of madness. I involuntarily took a step back. As I did, the eye swung downwards in its fleshy socket so that it was staring directly at me. Its gaze was so intense that it locked me in place. I felt so small, so weak as it examined me intently. Something began to drip from the eye's iris. At first, I thought that it was some sort of fluid. When one of the drops pushed itself up off the floor on spindly legs, however, I knew that wasn't the case. Small creatures were falling from inside the eye. Each looked vaguely like a centipede with wispy, tentacle-like appendages extending from their black-shelled bodies. They swarmed down the stairs at me. The eye's spell was broken. I hurried toward the long corridor that contained my sister and parents' bedrooms. The creatures began to make chittering noises as they reached the bottom of the stairs and skittered after me. I made it into the hallway and struggled to close the heavy wooden door that separated it from the entryway. I barely managed to get it shut in time. The creatures continued to make odd sounds on the other side of the door, but they made no attempt to break through. Everything that I had been through collapsed in on me, and I started to cry. I was still a kid after all, and no kid is prepared to go through something so horrific. Hell, most adults aren't either. I slumped down on the floor and held myself as my sobs robbed me of my breath. It took some time, but I eventually got control of myself. I wiped the tears from my eyes and stood back up, feeling more exhausted than I ever had. I still needed to find my family. This hallway looked the same as it always did. I wondered if whatever had taken over the rest of the house hadn't reached here yet. Whatever the case, I was just glad that I was safe for the moment. My parents' room was the closest, so I hurried over to the door and opened it. There are two images that will always be burned into my memory. No matter how many years pass, I can always see them in perfect clarity. They'll be with me until I die. This was the first of those images. The bedroom was bleeding. Thick blood was running down the walls and pouring off the ceiling like crimson waterfalls. The floor of the room was submerged in it, and it washed through the open door and out into the hallway as it covered my feet up to my ankles. In the center of the room, sitting on his knees with the blood flowing down around him, was my father. He was dressed in his pajamas and robe. His hands were stretched out to his sides with his palms upward like he was holding two invisible objects. He was moaning. His eyes were wide with fear. Standing behind him was a figure in a black robe. Its body was completely covered, and a ragged hood made it impossible to see its face. Paying no attention to me, the figure reached out its right arm. The robe slid away from the fingers slightly, and I saw that they weren't fingers at all, and were instead 3 delicate needles. Slowly, the needles pushed into and through the skin of my father's neck. My father gasped but remained still. The figure tugged the needles back, and a small sliver of skin peeled away from the neck while still remaining attached by a tiny flap. Using both hands, it pulled on the sliver over and over again. The skin began to unravel from my father's body. I don't know of a better way to put it. It came off like a pulled string unwinding a ball of yarn. My father didn't move, but the look in his eyes and the few sounds that escaped from his open mouth conveyed the immense pain that he was feeling. When roughly half the skin had been removed from his face, he finally saw me standing in the doorway. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. I got the message, though. I could see it in his eyes just as much as I could read it on his lips. Go. I did as I was told. I slammed the door shut and quickly backed away from it. I was a scared child. What could I have possibly done to save him? Logically, I know that the answer is nothing. That thing that was killing him ever so slowly couldn't be stopped by a mere 12-year-old boy. That's the logical answer. Logic isn't much comfort on the nights that I lie awake in bed, remembering how I left him to die alone. Directly across the hallway was the door to my sister's bedroom. I stared at it without making a move towards it, my shirt and sweatpants soaked with water, sweat, and blood. I didn't want to go inside. Something bad was waiting for me in her bedroom. I was sure of it. It was something that I had been feeling since I left my own room, but I hadn't been able to focus on because of everything that had happened. I don't know if I believe the stories about twins having some sort of psychic connection. As one myself, I was never able to finish my sister's sentences or know what she was thinking. I didn't know when she was in distress or hurt when I wasn't around. Maybe some twins have that kind of connection. We didn't. What I do know is that there's a kind of bond that I've never had with another person. I didn't even realize that bond existed, not consciously, until that night. The only reason I noticed it then was because it was gone. My sister was dead. I couldn't explain how I knew that, but I did. I refused to believe what I knew, however. I felt this deep need to prove myself wrong, to show myself that she was alive and well. Putting aside all my other feelings, I clung to that stubborn need to not accept the truth and marched over to her bedroom door. I hesitated for just a heartbeat before I opened it. I couldn't enter the room. A few feet inside the doorway was a translucent red substance that filled the entire chamber from floor to ceiling. My first thought was that the room had been filled with some sort of liquid, but it didn't drain out through the now open door. It instead remained still. While it wasn't completely transparent, it was clear enough that I could see my sister suspended inside of the substance. She was floating just above her bed. Her arms and legs stretched out to the sides. Her eyes were open and staring off into nothingness. That is the second image that I will never forget. I couldn't look away. I tried, but my eyes remained locked on her. Even when her limbs began to slowly separate from her body and move off in opposite directions, I just kept watching. It wasn't until after the pieces had broke apart and completely dissolved that I closed the door and stepped away from it in a daze. There was one more door in this part of the house. It was at the far end of the hallway. I turned my head towards it. It led to my mother's study. I started to walk towards it. It wasn't a conscious decision that I made. I think I put one foot in front of the other out of need to put some distance between me and the bedrooms. I didn't want to be anywhere near them, and it would be some time before I was willing to really examine what I had lost. I reached the halfway point when I heard a noise behind me. I turned and found that the door leading into the entryway had been opened. Stepping into the hallway was something that I couldn't comprehend. I need you to understand what I mean by that. When I say that I couldn't comprehend it, I'm not saying that it was frightening or that I wasn't sure what I was looking at. I mean that it was impossible for my mind, or for the human mind in general, to process and understand the being that was in front of me. It was large enough to fill the world, but at the same time small enough to interact with the tiniest of particles. It had both presence and absence of existence. The entirety of the being was a contradiction that somehow created harmony. Out of everything that I had seen that night, or whatever in my life, this being terrified me the most. It was like I had known on a primal level that it existed my entire life. This was death, and I was nothing before it. It didn't make a move toward me. I couldn't even be sure that it was paying attention to me. Why would it? A single mortal life wasn't worth the attention of the end of all things. Not sure what else to do, I continued towards my mother's study. After every step, I would look back over my shoulder, but the cosmic entity remained still. I reached the door and hurried inside. The study was large, one of the largest rooms in the house. Bookcases lined the walls, and display cases containing rare items were scattered throughout. In the center of the room was a wide oak desk. Sitting in a tall leather chair behind the desk was my mother. Her long hair was disheveled, and she looked older than I'd ever seen her. She didn't look up as I approached. Instead, her eyes remained locked on the object she was holding, the fata machina. It was operating. There was a white glow coming from the inside of the skull's eye socket, and I could hear the whirring of gears inside the machinery. I could feel a pulsating pressure emanating from it. My mother looked up at me, and our eyes locked. It was in that moment that I understood that she had done this. It was her fault that my father and sister were dead. I also knew, while she hadn't wanted them to die, she also didn't regret the decisions that she had made to bring us to this point. The manifestation of death entered the study behind me. I didn't turn around to look. It wasn't there for me. It went around the desk and seemed to regard my mother closely. She hadn't moved an inch, and she didn't even flinch when it reached out and touched her on the forehead. She gasped, but otherwise didn't respond. It could have ended her right there. There would have been no effort needed to snuff out a single candle when it was used to extinguishing entire stars. It chose not to, however. It simply tapped her lightly on the head. With that done, it turned and flipped a lever on the fata machina. The glow faded from the device's eyes, and the whirring of the machine stopped. The death manifestation disappeared, and the world inside of the house returned to normal. The night of horrors was over, and all that was left for me was a lifetime of unforgotten trauma.
The bodies of my father and sister were never recovered. They disappeared along with everything else. They are still officially declared missing by the authorities. Most people believe that my father simply took my sister and left with her. Until recently, my mother had been living in a mental hospital. Death's touch hadn't killed her, but the touch of such a being isn't meant to be experienced by a human. It drove her mad. She spent the remainder of her days ranting and raving in a private room, locked away from the rest of the world. It was a strangely fitting fate, given that she had caused everything because she searched for something to set her apart from everyone else. I haven't been able to forget what happened. God knows that I've tried. No matter how many bottles of alcohol I drink or syringes of questionable drugs I inject into myself, the memories remain. I lost everything that mattered in a single night in the worst way imaginable. There's nothing that can comfort someone when they've witnessed something like that. A month ago, my mother died. It wasn't peaceful. The doctors told me that she choked on her own tongue during one of her fits. I can't pretend that I was upset about it. Everything that she had and owned became mine. The house that's fallen into a state of disrepair, the various properties that she had purchased over the years, stacks of boxes filled with trinkets and heirlooms, everything. Those boxes include a small black one containing an old skull with clockwork-like machinery attached to it. So, that's what you folks are bidding on this evening. The Fata Machina, the key to unlocking universes beyond imagination and realms pulled straight from the depths of nightmares. I can't say for sure which you'll unlock, but I can tell you with absolute certainty that one way or another, it will change your life. Just be prepared for the possibility that something may come through to you instead of you going to it. I also have a second item available to the person who wins this item. Sealed inside this envelope is the exact configuration that my mother used the night that she unknowingly sentenced my family to death. It is for sale to the auction winner for $50 million. I know that's a steep price. I also know what you're thinking to yourself right now. Given the staggeringly high number of possible configurations, it's almost impossible that you'll stumble across the same combination that my mother did. Why pay so much money when you can take a microscopic risk instead? That's not the right question to be asking yourself, though. What you should be asking yourself instead is what you would give to keep hell off your doorstep. Answer that question, and then we'll talk. Let's get the auction started. I'm going to pass things back to Mr. Pembroke, your auctioneer this evening. Good luck to you all, and you can't say that I didn't warn you. I didn't stop running. I suppose I could have if I wanted to, but the thought of what would happen to me if I stood still for any more than a second frightened me to death. My breaths grew louder and louder as I ran down the dull gray hallway which I casually walked through so many times before. My head spun as I turned the corner and collided with Dr. Preston. "Jennifer!" Dr. Preston exclaimed as the stack of papers she had been carrying dumped out of her hands and spilled all over the hallway floor. She adjusted the thick black glasses which had been knocked loose from the impact and asked, "Jennifer, what's wrong?" "I'm sorry," I panted heavily as Dr. Preston held me by both my shoulders. I knelt down to help Dr. Preston pick up her papers, but she tightened her grip on my arm and lifted me back up. "Don't worry about the papers, dear," she said with her soothing southern accent. "That's all just some dumb pioneer mumbo-jumbo. What I want to know is why you're running through the lab with such energy." I opened my mouth to answer her before I realized that I had absolutely no clue why I was running. The last thing I remember, I was sitting in the break lounge, drinking a cup of iced tea and watching the news on the tiny television that Pioneer Electronics provided its employees with. The next thing I knew, I had a strong sense of déjà vu, coupled with the horrible feeling that my life was about to end very suddenly, for whatever reason. Running seemed to help. I opened my mouth to answer her before I realized that I had absolutely no clue why I was running. The last thing I remember, I was sitting in the break lounge, drinking a cup of iced tea and watching the news on the tiny television that Pioneer Electronics provided its employees with. The next thing I knew, I had a strong sense of déjà vu, coupled with the horrible feeling that my life was about to end very suddenly, for whatever reason. Running seemed to help. I guess I was just having a panic attack, I answered, putting on a fake smile. I guess I was just having a panic attack, I answered, putting on a fake smile. How long has it been since you've had a panic attack? Dr. Preston asked with concern in her voice. Not since my sophomore year of high school, I told her. Are you gonna be okay? Oh, yeah, I assured her. I think I'll be fine now. I just, I'm okay. Well, that's good. Just remember, dear, if you feel sick at all, just let me know and you'll be on your way home. I'll call a taxi and everything. Jane, I'm fine, I repeated, realizing too late that the only times I called Dr. Preston Jane were when I was nervous. I hoped she hadn't picked up on that painfully obvious tale of mine. Well, if you're sure you'll be able to keep going today, then I have some good news for you. Cliff just sent me a message and the power issue is fixed. Steven's ready to go online. Oh yeah. I shook my head and remembered what I'd been working on before I went to the break room. I've spent the last 2 years developing an advanced artificial intelligence unit with Dr. Preston, the woman who had been my boss up until that point when she promoted me to co-manager, and Ian Bell, my intern. We had codenamed the project Steven. The purpose of Steven was to create an artificial intelligence, or AI, which acted, talked, and even thought just like a human. We didn't want him to be perfect, which is what most AI are, especially those AI made at Pioneer Electronics. We wanted Steven to make mistakes, lie, and cheat for the purpose of self-preservation, just like any human would. It was a huge project, which became apparent when we discovered that the computer we were trying to run Steven on couldn't handle his program. One trip down to Clifford Hanks to ask him to work his maintenance magic, and the problem was fixed within an hour. Wow, an hour, I thought, checking my watch. Is that really all it's been? It feels like I went down to him yesterday. Well, are you gonna go or what, dear? Dr. Preston interrogated me. Yeah, of course, I grinned, turning my attention back to the situation at hand. Why don't you go find Ian and you two can sit in the observation room while I boot up Steven? You bet, dear, she said, as I bent back down to pick up the papers again. She shooed me away. Go on, I already told you, I'll take care of this. I nodded excitedly, and turned around and headed back in the direction of where I was running from. After 2 years of working with the brightest programmer I've ever met, I was finally going to meet our fantastic creation. While I knew I was supposed to be happy about this big moment, I still had a horrible sense of fear in the pit of my stomach. I turned to enter the door to the tiny lab, which had been left open. I walked over to the computer to the right of the door and turned on the enormous monitor. As I waited for it to boot up, I wandered over to the opposite side of the lab and looked through the window to the observation room. Dr. Preston and Ian were just getting settled in. I flashed them an enthusiastic thumbs up before grabbing the rolling chair, which had somehow wound up on the same side of the lab as the window to the observation room, and guiding it back to the computer monitor. I sat down on the blue cushion and rolled as close to the keyboard as I could get without breaking my ribs before finally flipping the switch on the Pioneer memory box. The monitor went dark for a moment, but after about 5 seconds, a bright blue light lit up the entire lab. I waited with bated breath for a face to form in the light. But unfortunately, it didn't come. Dr. Lane, we don't think it's working. Ian's shaky voice whispered in my ear, making me jump. I'd forgotten that I was wearing an earpiece. Oh, I know, I said, disappointed. Ian and I are gonna go and... Dr. Preston started to say, but she was interrupted by a low hum emanating from the computer speakers. Hello? I asked, feeling a little silly that I was talking to what could still be an inanimate object. To my delight, the hum rose to form the slow but audible word. Hello. Steven? Yes. This is Steven. Can you hear me, Jennifer? Your voice keeps slowing down every now and then, but yeah, I can hear you. How did you know my name? Stephen's smooth, calm voice asked. I was about to ask you the same question, I commented with the same tone of voice. My excitement of hearing Stephen's voice was hampered the moment I heard him say my name. I had not programmed him to know my name, and my name hadn't been spoken since I started him up. At least, not into any microphone that Stephen could hear through. And according to the first rule of Pioneer Artificial Intelligence units, as soon as any AI becomes too self-conscious, it needs to be deleted. A self-conscious AI could cause serious damage to the company. Then, Stephen said something that reinforced my thoughts.
I know your name because I programmed you. There's no reason for you to know my name.
Actually, Stephen, I programmed you, I corrected him.
No, that's not.
Stephen said as his voice dipped down again.
I've spent years working on you. There's no chance that I was just created.
I actually gave you all of your memories, I explained. You remember when you were 3 and you fell off the lawn chair and got that scar on your cheek? I programmed you to think that. Stephen didn't answer for a while, but when he finally did, he said,
Jennifer, I'll be right back.
As soon as he said this, the blue computer monitor dimmed a little bit. Jennifer, Ian broke the silence. Could you come back in here, please? Yeah, I said without turning my head. I stood up and exited the lab. I opened the first door on the right side of the hallway to find Dr. Preston and Ian sitting on 2 of the 4 chairs in the observation room. Dr. Lane, we need to talk to you about what just happened, Ian said calmly as Dr. Preston gestured for me to sit in a chair next to them. What was that, dear? Dr. Preston asked as I perched myself gingerly on the orange plastic chair across from her. I honestly don't know, I responded. I wanted Stephen to think like a human, not think he was one. And he thinks he programmed you, Ian added. You didn't do that, did you? No, I didn't. I gave him all of his memories, but I'm sure there was no memory of programming me. Dr. Preston spoke up. We have quite the dilemma here, don't we? What do you mean? Ian asked. Well, think about it, dear. Stephen thinks he's a human. We think we're humans. Stephen thinks he programmed us. We think we programmed him. In fact, right now, Stephen's probably having this same conversation with some of his coworkers. I didn't program any personalities except for Stephen, I said. But you gave him memories of friends, a job, and family, didn't you? And you made it so that he would continue to make his own artificial memories after creation, so he wouldn't even know if his real life just started a couple minutes ago. You did that, didn't you? Yeah, I guess I did. I grabbed the corners of my pale white lab coat and began flapping them nervously. What are you getting at, Jane? Think philosophically, dear. Dr. Preston stood up and approached the large window which covered a majority of the wall to the right of the entrance. The blue computer screen flickered, as if it knew we were watching it. Could someone please spell it out for me? Ian asked, breaking the silent tension which had just filled the room. Dr. Preston turned back towards us and pushed her thick glasses up her aged nose. All I'm saying is that it's possible that we don't exist. Okay, that doesn't make any sense, I scoffed, standing up. I exist, okay? If I didn't exist, how could I be thinking right now? Ian asked, nearly knocking over his own chair as he stood up as well. It's just a thought, Dr. Preston said defensively. She sat back down, and Ian and I automatically lowered ourselves into our chairs too. I closed my eyes and basked in the silence. What is going on? I wondered. How is it possible that I don't exist? Although Dr. Preston usually knows what she's talking about. But still, I know that I'm real. What did that guy with that one girly name say? I think, therefore I am. Just knowing that I can question my existence ensures that I exist, right? All right, let me talk to him again. I sighed, feeling a little bad for upsetting Dr. Preston. I'll see what I think. If I can't figure out what's going on here, I'll have no choice but to bring him offline. Dr. Preston and Ian nodded simultaneously in understanding before I stood up and exited the observation room. As I entered the lab, the blue computer monitor grew brighter.
Jennifer.
Stephen's voice called from the screen. I sat down in the chair and noticed the faint outline of a man sitting in the blue light. I'm here, Stephen, I said. Can we talk a little more? Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing. Do you have a family? I asked, remembering the family that I had programmed for him. I have a wife, Stephen replied. Her name is Melinda. What about kids? 2. They're both girls. What are their names? Madison is the older one. She's 13. Lillian's 8. Would you like to see a picture of them? I'd love to, I smiled. The more we talked, the more apparent Stephen's silhouette on the screen became. I realized that I was holding the corners of my lab coat again, and I released them quickly. I knew that Stephen was feeling the same awkward tension that I was, which comforted me a little. The figure reappeared on the screen. By now, the blue light had faded enough for me to see Stephen's eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. I could even make out some blinking lights on the wall behind him. Here. This is my wife, Stephen smiled, holding a framed picture up to the camera. In it, I saw a man and a woman. The man was Stephen, but he looked much younger in the photograph than he did on my screen. The woman next to him, Melinda, had long, wavy brunette hair, a pair of big eyes, and a smile that stretched from ear to ear. I remembered creating that picture. And these are my children, he said, taking the picture of his wife away from the screen and instead holding up one of 2 girls sitting in a pumpkin patch. Maddie and Lil mean the world to me, he added quietly. They're beautiful, I told him, wiping a tear from my eye. Are you married, Jennifer? Yes, I just got married, I said. A year ago today. What's his name? Jeff Lane. Do you have any pictures? I already had the pictures of Jeff in my hand. Holding it up to the screen, I noticed Stephen's hazel eyes light up as he saw my husband's picture. It didn't take a genius to know that he had seen it before. I took the frame away from the camera and set it back down below the monitor. Stephen and I spent an hour talking about our families, friends, and jobs. Neither one of us mentioned AI again. It was like talking to a real human. Well, mission accomplished, I thought, as I walked home that night. I wanted an AI that would think just like a human, and I got one. The next day at work, I found Ian before I found Dr. Preston. I was glad that I got a chance to talk to him, because he had left the day before without talking to me. Ian, I said, grabbing his shoulder as he passed by me. Could I have a word with you? Yeah, sure, he said with the same surprised look that he always had in his eyes. Followed me to the break lounge, where we both sat in the faded red couch that faced the vending machines. Ian, how late did you stay last night? I asked. I was here until you said goodnight to Stephen, Ian answered. I left while you were staring at the blank computer screen. Oh, right. I cleared my throat and continued. So, you remember the entire conversation that we had with each other, right? Yeah. What did you think? Even though I didn't clarify what I meant, Ian already knew. I think he's just going to have to go. That's what I was afraid of. I sighed, looking up at the dark television screen. I wanted to give Stephen one more chance for me to convince him that he wasn't real, but if things didn't go well, I'd have to delete the program from the Pioneer memory box. It wouldn't be a total loss. I backed up all of the codes on Dr. Preston's computer. If I had to delete Stephen, then we would just go back to code and figure out what went wrong. Ian went to find Dr. Preston while I booted up Stephen's program. It only took a couple of seconds for the screen to turn blue. As the blue screen faded away, I saw Stephen sitting in the chair on the computer monitor. He squinted at the camera and asked, Jennifer, are you there? I'm here, Stephen, I said. Is something wrong? He inquired. No, why? You sound sad. There's a lot going on today. You and I have a lot in common, Jennifer. Oh, are you busy too? Not really, but I am sad. I have the strange feeling that we're both sad for the same reason, I said. Am I right, Stephen? Stephen was quiet for a moment, but then he said, Jennifer, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but there are protocols here that must be followed. Yep, that's what I thought, I said, barely opening my mouth. We didn't get to talk about this very much yesterday, Stephen, but you're an artificial intelligence, and you think that you're human. Actually, Jennifer, you're the AI, and just the fact that you think you programmed me says that you could do permanent damage to this computer. At least we both have the same feelings about this, I whispered. The question is, which one of us is the real human? Actually, I had a chance to think about that. Stephen leaned forward in his chair. An AI has to have access to the computer's hard drive to run properly. The real AI would use his or her own computer as means of controlling the real person's computer. I nodded slowly. So no matter which one of us deletes the other, the real AI will be deleted and the real person will be okay. That's right. Stephen and I looked into each other's eyes for a short time before I asked him, "How are you sure that you're a human?" He looked taken aback. Well, up until yesterday when I met you, 100%. Now, I'm a little iffy. I groaned. I was in the exact same boat. It would still be nice if we could stay friends, I told Stephen. He nodded. It would. We have a lot in common. However, protocols are clear. We could both get fired for leaving the other here. Dying won't be too bad, I declared confidently. What do you mean? I mean that, at least if you're the AI, you won't even know that you died. I programmed you to record your entire life. When you die, you'll relive your entire life over and over again. Stephen grimaced and nodded. I did the same for you, he said. You won't relive the entire life you remember, just your real life, from the moment where you were first activated by me, and you won't remember that all of this already happened. You won't even know that you died. I nodded my head and noticed my eyes were starting to water. I buried my hands inside the sleeve of my lab coat and wiped the tears away. So, I breathed, which one of us should delete the other? I will, Stephen said. I'll delete you if, after I do this, you are still sitting there. That means that I was the real AI. If you don't remember this conversation, then you were the AI. Just do it, I said quickly, wiping my eyes again. Stephen nodded. Goodbye, Jennifer, he whispered hoarsely. Goodbye, Stephen. Stephen broke eye contact with me and began typing away at his computer. The typing echoed through the speakers next to my screen. I turned around and saw Dr. Preston and Ian practically pressing their noses against the glass window in anticipation. As I turned back around to face the computer, I was shocked to find that Stephen was fading away. He was slowly getting replaced with the same blue screen that I saw when I first activated him. However, even though the video was fading, the audio kept growing louder and louder. The buttons on Stephen's keyboard tapping away at my brain, causing every last cell to vibrate violently. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to move. I couldn't just sit here and listen as Stephen destroyed himself. I stood up so quickly that the blue rolling chair rolled all the way to the window of the observation room on the other side of the lab. Dr. Preston and Ian were no longer sitting there. They were gone. I ran out of the lab. The moment I entered the hallway, I felt like someone started squeezing my lungs. Oh no, not again, I thought. It's another panic attack. I felt dizzy. Every direction I turned, I felt like there was someone waiting there to grab me and take me somewhere, far away where I'd never be seen again. Leave me alone! With what little air I had left in my chest. I didn't even know who I was screaming at. I just couldn't stand still and wait for someone to take me away. I turned my head and realized that I was still standing outside of the small lab. I turned to the right and ran down the hall. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where I thought I could go. I just couldn't think straight. I didn't stop running. I suppose I could have if I wanted to, but the thought of what would happen to me if I stood still for any more than a second frightened me to death. My breaths grew louder and louder as I ran down the dull gray hallway which I casually walked through so many times before. My head spun as I turned the corner and collided with Dr. Preston.